This program contains adult content.
Is there a God?
Big atheist.
Really?
What, am I an idiot? Come on.
That yes, it would be nice if you could throw your sins and your responsibilities on someone else. But it's not true.
It looks like far-left lunacy.
I don't believe that it's true that religion is moral or ethical.
You don't need to follow anybody!
It's not human intelligence!
If someone doesn't value logical consistency, what logical argument are you going to give them that will demonstrate that they should?
Welcome to the Godless Rebelution. Today is Tuesday, October 24th. This is episode 179. I am Dan Ellis.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Ryan.
That's what your headphones said.
I'm trying real hard to think of a way to derail that, and it's tough. Yeah, sure.
Oh, you could never be a Ryan.
Nope.
Ryan is not with us this evening. He's off doing some filming stuff. Instead, we are joined again by the wonderful beer spill and Mr. Chris Reed.
Twice. In 2 recordings, I have spilt beer in the studio. Fuck me, right? God.
Oh, dude.
It's a good thing that this whole thing isn't lined with, like, foam or some absorbent material.
Oh, it smells like beer in here, guys. You having a good time?
I like that when I walk in here and it just smells like beer. I'm like,
beer and mold.
Smells like home. We are also joined by our special guest, once again, Ms. Megan Kennedy.
Oh, hi.
Yay! I'm so happy to have you back in the studio with us again.
Thanks. I'm stoked to be here.
You were a whole lot of fun last time.
I hope to be fun this time also.
And I'll very much like your presentations for the religious education series.
Awesome. I'm glad. It's been doing really awesome.
Yeah?
Well, as opposed to all the other years that it didn't exist, it's been doing great this year.
Yeah, they're very cool. I don't know. It's just, I like learning stuff.
Learning is the best.
Yeah.
What a stupid waste of time.
What a dumbass thing to do with your time. Fucking go learn shit? Nerd.
Oh, that was funny. I don't understand. So for background for everybody else who doesn't know, that was kind of an inside joke because I checked into Megan's recent talk, The Ones Who Dwell Within.
Mm-hmm.
And there was somebody that I'm friends with on Facebook who, for some strange reason, decided to make a shitty comment on there. It was a GIF meme of what a waste of time. And I was like,
stupid waste of time.
What a stupid waste of time. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why would you, of all of the things that you could be doing with your life at that moment, you chose that moment to come to my timeline on something that I posted and make that shitty comment.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because it was, there was no originality, no thought, it was something that he just posted a thing for. I just posted a GIF reply. I can't remember the actress's name, but the GIF was "Don't be an asshole." And then Matt came along and posted some nicely worded, thoughtful comment. And then the guy deleted his comment, so the whole thread goes away. And then he blocked me. He blocked me on Facebook.
Well, and all you were doing was just saying, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to go learn about this thing. And I was scrolling by. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'll like that. And then I keep scrolling. I'm like, the fuck is this shit?
Of all the subjects to get mad about, like...
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was just super fucking weird. Well...
It was weird.
Like, people, that's what I don't understand about people a lot of the time is, like, why do people choose to be a giant asshole when they don't have to be?
They don't choose, per se.
The greatness is thrust upon them, as all heroes.
And yet, when you call them on it, you're the asshole.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, though, too, because, like, I would imagine that he knew he was wrong to make that comment because he deleted the comment before he blocked me.
And he didn't respond to any of the things that I posed.
Yeah.
And I wasn't being a dick. I didn't even swear in there. I just was asking him, well, here's at least 3 reasons off the top of my head why Dan might be doing that. Do you have any of these in common with you? I mean, and he's just like, I don't want to be on Facebook anymore.
It was just really fucking weird. Like, the whole thing, even thinking back on it, like, what the fuck, man? That was just, like, super douche move, and then topped it off with a bigger douche move. I don't understand people.
Mm-hmm.
They're weird.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But your talk was awesome.
Thank you.
That was the second one that I have attended recently. You also did the Crucible of Goodness.
Yep. That was our horror movie one about how Christianity is responsible a little, depending on the word you want to use, responsible for all of our horror movie tropes and the things we're afraid of, basically. Yeah. So basically created all of our horror, the horror genre we know and love today, at least in America and the West. Yeah. I can't speak for, obviously, countries where Christianity is not as big of an influence. But.
Is not as prevalent.
Right. And I'm with you on Event Horizon.
Oh my God, I love that movie. It's so Christian, though. But it's a weird kind of Christian. I love it. I love it.
I never noticed the cross until you pointed it out. I'm like, oh, fuck.
It's only because he chews on it in one scene. Yeah. Like, there's some stressful scene where he's just got it in his mouth, kind of like a just mindless tick that people have. And I don't think I would have noticed other than that, honestly.
Well, so what are you guys talking about? So I mean, I was there at the talk, but
so part of the talk we've got, and it's split into 3 sections, and one of the sections we do like a case study, if you will, on Event Horizon, talking about the trope of the forbidden fruit. So obviously this is older than Christianity, but it's most famously Christianity, and that and Pandora's Box, I'd say. Those two are probably the most well-known ancient examples of it. But just the idea that there's boundaries or knowledge that humans are not allowed to access, and that accessing such or trying even just attempting to access it is going to end in horrendous death, not just on you, but your tribe, right? Whatever that looks like. And so Event Horizon is just a great example of that in a modern context, because modern horror has had to account for globalization and space travel and all these new anxieties that humans have never really had to deal with before. Lovecraft did a lot of that in his early years, like dealing with, I mean, obviously, it's unfortunate about Lovecraft because I love his writing, but it's super fucking racist. And there's no getting around it or talking about it. And his fears of the cosmic horror he presented to us was really this prevalent, gross racism, metaphorically expressed, and that sucks. But again, he was dealing with a thing that people hadn't really dealt with in the same way that he was in his time, right? This immigration move and this kind of new version of America coming in. So it's similar to that, where...
So like if Trump was literate.
Right. It had a little bit of an imagination and some,
Right.
Yeah, just was a person, I guess. If Trump was like half a person, he would have been Lovecraft, maybe.
I see.
But yeah, Event Horizon is a great example of our modern version of that. Just this idea of Christianity is weird, where it doesn't like you to approach death at all, or even any of the realms that might surround it, angels, demons, like all that stuff, right? You're not supposed to even be trying to touch or cross or access that until death. And so they're really, it's that anti-intellectualist strain that, it's why they avoid science so much. Not every sect, and obviously every part of Christianity is going to kind of have different rules on, what they allow their congregants to access. But it's just a fear of the unknown, and a fear that you're going to get punished if you try to, I guess, above your pay grade, find some knowledge above your pay grade a little. This idea that we have stuff we can't handle, which is fair. Like I feel like we can't handle nukes. I feel like that's a fair forbidden fruit. I wish we could fucking put them back in the box, but we access them anyway. So that at that point, you gotta just find a way to fucking figure it out.
I feel like a lot of toddlers can't handle sex with priests, and so maybe we could just
maybe we could do that too.
Get rid of the whole thing and call it even.
Toddlers? Oh, wait.
Anyone, really? Yeah, any.
Well, I don't know what your point was.
No, I'm just saying we need to get rid of it all. And I'm like, just toddlers?
Get
just
rid
of the toddlers?
Yeah,
just the toddlers?
Just the toddlers, yeah.
Toddlers or the priests, one of them has to go.
That seems to be the temptation, right? I mean...
Well, yeah, I mean...
Shoot the messenger, you mean.
Those sexy-ass babies. Oh, my diaper's all full.
That was a joke on Bob's Burgers, wasn't it?
Probably.
I mean, not exactly how you did it. Yours was a little grosser.
Scrape the barrel.
Them sexy-ass babies. Well, you mentioned that Christianity... So I think you said Christianity doesn't want us to contact any non-Earth realms. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of my notes that I took away from your talk. Why do you think that is? Like, I don't know. To me, when I heard that, I thought, well, yeah, they don't want you playing with, tarot cards, Ouija boards, seances, psychics, none of that. I wonder how much of that is them knowing that all of that is garbage, but it could possibly lead you away from your religion, or that through that you could find out that your religion is false because this is false and it's all kind of tangentially tied, or is it a real fear? Like they think that you're going to contact a dead relative,
right,
who could provide you with some information you may not have. It seems weird to me that they're so against any contacting of other realms or speaking with dead people or anything.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of stuff. I think everything you said is probably totally accurate and fair. I think there's individuals who, just like there's individuals who firmly believe in the devil. I've met individuals who meet me as an atheist and are firmly believed if they don't save my soul and convince me to believe in something close to God, that I'm going to burn. And and that's hard when it is sincere concern, because they don't see the condescension. They don't see, they don't think outside of their own paradigm. And their paradigm is, this person is going to rot forever. And, I have to save
you.
Right. And that's a difficult, like, it's one thing when you can kind of tell it's a condescension based on a power trip, but it's another thing entirely when you can tell it's like somebody who's just been isolated, who sincerely cares about you. And it's like, crap, like, I'm gonna have to break your heart right now. And you're gonna have to you have to own those emotions of fearing whether or not I'm gonna burn in hell, because that's not on me, right? So I think that's part of it. I think, for me, there's a couple other bigger things. Christianity established, compared with like earlier paganist traditions, this intercessor idea where you had to go talk to a priest and you had to talk to people who were ordained and trained in such a way, like ancient Romans could talk to their gods. They could go to the temple, they could perform rituals. It wasn't required that they had to go through somebody to talk to God. And Christianity separated it because it allows them to build a power structure. And I'm not saying that was necessarily the motivation, but it wasn't not the motivation, right? So if you allow people to access what I call, and what a lot of, it's in the scholarly world, the word called the numenos. So the idea of just kind of a vague word for afterlife or realms beyond here. If you allow people to contact that without your authority, or your intercession, then what's the point of continuing to go to your church? If I can talk to God by myself in my house, if I can access the dead and get all of the ancestral knowledge I need, without having to go to your church and pay tithing and build these awesome cathedrals and what have you, whatever funding things or just directions the church may go that I disagree with, why wouldn't I? That's just going to encourage people to sprout off. I think there is a genuine fear of, we've always had fears of the undead and demons and spirits and in Islam, you got the jinn, right? That hang out around ruins and isolated places. So there's always been this idea of things that are going to pounce out at you if they know you're looking. That the abyss looks back at you, right? I think it's a human thing. I think that's just a psychological, like, you can't not get fucked with in the dark if you stay in it too long. And I think that's real. I think that's a real psychological, emotional, even sociological thing that happens to us. Well,
I mean, it's what allowed us to survive early on, right? I mean, all the people that didn't care, that would wander off into the darkness in the savannah, didn't get to reproduce.
Right.
So,
in a real literal sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Christianity is just, they have such a weird relationship with death. They also consider death evil, which is also a new idea. Like, Greeks and Romans didn't have this idea of death as an evil concept. It was just a shitty part of life that you kind of had to cope with. And, I like there's a Greek myth about the three main brothers, Hades and Zeus and Poseidon, kind of fighting over what they were going to rule, and Zeus and Poseidon getting all haughty because they got the sky and the sea, and Hades like, yeah, but everybody's going to end up with me, so fuck you. Like, he ended up getting the most power in the end because nobody could avoid him, right? But it was an amoral thing. Hades has a lot of, there's obviously the kidnapping of Persephone, which is a whole problematic thing, but there's a lot of myths where he's altruistic or at least amoral. It's not a moral judgment. He's just part of life. So I think once you call death evil, you don't have a choice theologically but to beat it and to make it an enemy, which means you can't consort with your enemy. You can't, there's just a whole lot of control that has to go into that to maintain a myth of forbiddenness and taboo and fear. And so I think that Christianity's just really got a hold on that beating death thing. Then death is unnatural, right? Christ beats it. Yeah,
we all beat it, don't we? I mean, Christ is no exception, but what did he have to do in relation to death? Oh,
just the resurrection.
We're talking about death. Sorry, I thought we careened off into masturbation.
Yeah, exactly. That one sound, like, Christ beats it. So.
Oh, he totally does. He beats it. We all beat it. It's fine. It's just Christianity tries to pretend, but
their views on death seem fairly schizophrenic, right? I mean, on one hand, it's
views on life too.
But it's this evil, bad thing that must be avoided, and we need to fight to stay alive, and You know, you need to, if you've got a disease, you need to fight the disease. You need to try to stay here as long as possible, even if you're suffering. But when you die, you go and sit in your golden palace, you with God and all of your relatives whom you've been missing. And it should be this wondrous celebration of the life you had and now the new life you've attained. But there's mourning, there's sadness, there's fear surrounding death. Like it seems really schizophrenic to hold both of those things in your mind at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and I think Christianity and religion stuff in general, it's especially, I'm sure all of us as atheists, like, if you've ever had to go through mourning as one, it's really difficult because people who aren't atheists have no fucking idea what to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
They want to tell you how everybody's in a better place and God and blah, and you're just like, shut the fuck up. And again, they mean well. They're working within their own paradigm. Yeah. They're just trying to do what the only thing in their world that has ever worked. I get it. But that doesn't help somebody who doesn't believe in that. And it really, I got to question how much it helps people. I've read so many stories about how much it actually helps religious people because you still have to go through mourning. I don't give a shit how religious you are. If your religion's allowed you to overcome like the stages of mourning or like emotions, I want to talk to you and I want to talk to your religion because I don't believe you.
And doesn't that say so much about what their beliefs really, really are when it comes down to like, when life is easy, it's not hard to go throw this in everybody else's face, this religion, spirituality. But what the fuck are you doing crying at a funeral? Why? Why are you doing that?
You should be stoked.
If you really believe this, I mean, unless you think they've gone to hell, then yeah, you should be like, well, whatever. It should be a meh for you. But they don't. They act like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just shows the humanness of it. I don't feel like religions just make, especially Christianity, just doesn't make room. We talked about this in the talk. We don't make room to be human. And that leads to a repression of those emotions, of those shadow self sides that are fine. Usually they're not really like, it's not like all of us have the urge to murder, but we still repress parts of ourselves that society tells us are shitty or not acceptable. And Christianity has a lot of those depending on the sect that you subscribe to. And eventually those things can't be repressed though, those parts of being human. So they're going to find a way out. You're going to get sick. It's going to become physical. You're going to start having problems at work. Like your mourning is going to go somewhere. So if you're not prepared, your religion should be helping you with that. So I hope that Christians are getting help with that. I mean, I guess as one, I can't say they're not, but you're not going to convince me that your religion's not making you go through mourning emotions. It's not. I don't believe that religion's that powerful. It should be helping you get over those and like reincorporate into society and work through this reality. But you're never going to convince me that it's like just wipe those emotions out or makes you feel that much better.
Yeah, it's really strange to me. I mean, so I've mentioned before that I think everybody's weird about death. We're just weird about it in our own way.
America's way weird about death too.
And I mean, for me, I don't know. I'm definitely weird about death. At least according to the norms that have been set down by my family and other people that I know. Like when somebody close to me dies, I don't know, I have a hard time feeling a whole lot of emotion about that for some reason. Like, I know I'm not going to see them again, and that's a real bummer. But, a lot of my family members, it's almost like they worship death itself. Like, they've got to go and visit the headstones for every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary. They've got to decorate it. They've got to make sure it stays clean, and it's like, I can't tell exactly what their motivations are there. I mean, to me, it's like, and this was even before I decided or realized that I was an atheist, but it's like, you're dead. When I had some vague notion or idea of what death was, and I still believed in an afterlife and that, there are spirits walking around and, my relatives could be watching what I'm doing, whatever. I never once thought, what they'd really like me to do is go and stand in front of a rock with their name on it and cry about shit. Like, I always had it in my mind that they would much prefer that I would be out doing something fun and thinking of them and having fond memories of the time we spent together versus, like I said, standing on a piece of ground where a rock is and their rotting remains are under it. It's never made any sense to me at all, but most of the members of my family, like, they're at the cemetery constantly.
Yeah, and I think depending on cultures, I know, certain cultures, like Latino cultures, have specific holidays set around that, like Day of the Dead, where it's a very strict religious schedule, and that makes more sense to me. The Christianity one, I'm with you, where I've never been able to lock down, and I really think it's because they didn't lock it down. I just think Christian culture and Western European culture that got imported here, this denial of death, this kind of like Victorian Puritan rejection of the body and just all these gross parts of being human. I mean, because the funerary industry, I mean, that's a Victorian era, like French thing, right? The idea of we're going to embalm the body. We're going to put it in this nice casket. We're going to make it live forever underground where nobody's ever going to see it again. We're going to wreck the ground for the next like 100 years from farming. You can't farm that shit. Like even if you plowed over these cemeteries or whatever, like the embalming fluid leaking out and everything, you're fucked. Like we are actively wrecking future generations with the way we do death. And there's awesome morticians that are like millennial morticians who are pushing against this movement and trying to create a new, more green death movement and a healthier death movement and push back against this kind of, just really unhealthy relationship we have with death because you can't escape it. I feel like America's got this like weird death cult thing. Watching after the Vegas shooting was every time there's a shooting, it comes out just this, I don't know what to call us at this point. I mean, we just love it. We love killing everybody. We love killing each other. We love the body counts. We love all the gore and details. We love hearing each other's trauma.
Yep.
Look at the sexual assault stuff that comes out, dude. All anybody wants to hear is everybody's stories about how they were raped and attacked.
Yep.
That shit sucks to talk about, man. But that's all we want to. But it's like we can't. It's like we can't have empathy, or we can't put ourselves in another person's shoes unless it's like this horrible trauma gore tale. And I don't know what the fuck's wrong with us, but we really like. There's a weird lack of empathy in our culture we're not taught empathy as a virtue in our culture.
We don't use words like that on this show, Chris.
Oh, come on, man.
You said it. You should have a siren that you hit on the board. Where's your sound effect board? What is this?
Oh, I don't know.
Amateur hour?
This is Ryan's stuff.
Oh.
But that did your example when you were talking about, your family spending all that time at this. I mean, that's not uncommon for people to do, especially, It just made me think, like, what the fuck do they think is going on? Like, I mean, if I put my little Christian hat on, and I start, like, there's this whole spirit world or whatever, the last thing I'm doing is spending centuries sitting by my rotting corpse waiting for people to show up. I'm fucking riding ghost T-Rexes around, and I'm fucking,
space,
fuck
dude.
you guys. I'll see you in a little bit. Yeah. Who cares?
Yep.
I'm not there. Nobody's there.
Go find aliens. That'd be my
Go find aliens,
first thing. Is like, okay, we're going on a space tour. I'm going to fly around until I find some other life, and it's going to be amazing. Like, why would I be here? Don't expect me to be here. I'm not going to be here.
Yeah, there's so much better to do than hang around in cemeteries and old mansions, slamming doors and blowing out candles.
Well, you got to wait by your corpse until judgment, and then you get to have the fun.
Oh, is that true?
I think
Jesus won't let us have any fun until he's back.
Yeah.
You're just tethered to your
technically,
to
you're
your
not.
corpse?
I don't think you're supposed to even have an afterlife experience until after judgment, until he brings you back and then judges you. Then you get your afterlife. At least that's my understanding of what Christianity
It reminds me of Prophecy, that fucking 90s movie. Oh, so great. Christopher Walken's in it. Oh, so good. It's so underrated. Like, the mythology in it's so weird. It's such a weird take on Christianity. I love it.
I could sew your mouth shut with your mother's dung in your mouth or something like that. Oh, man, he was hardcore
and
in that fucking movie.
Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn's Lucifer for like 30 seconds. It's amazing.
Wait, what is this movie?
The Prophecy?
There's a Korean War vet that was brutal as shit during the Korean War. Like, talking collected ears for necklaces and stuff like that.
Sounds pretty cool.
His soul escapes from, I think, hell, and it gets stuck in the body of this little girl on the Indian reservation. And so heaven and hell are coming to look for the soul because whoever gets it is going to win the war between heaven and hell.
And you find out that since Gabriel rebelled, which has been a while, so you've got this whole extra layer that Lucifer rebelled and then Gabriel tried to follow, that nobody's gotten into heaven since he rebelled, which has been 1,000, 2,000 years. And that blew my mind. What is everybody doing? What are everybody's souls doing? All these Christians are still doing their rituals and shit, and everybody and
doesn't matter.
And it's just this weird stalemate where they're well, Gabriel's got the Civil War going on. They're not letting anybody in or out. I don't tell you. And just, man, it's such a cool take on the whole mythology. I love that movie. And Christopher Walken is hilarious. It's just that dark, weird, creepy angel, that immortal character. Yeah, it's great. I love that one.
Hi, I'm Lucian Greaves, spokesperson and co-founder of the Satanic Temple. Check out my website, grayfaction.org, if you want to be disgusted and alarmed. You're listening to Godless Rebelution.
but I've spent a lot of time listening to your show, screaming at my iPod.
The next rant will start right after this.
Here follows a public service announcement for the Two Skeptical Chaps podcast. Greetings, Americans! Over here in London, we are well aware that not all of you are loud, xenophobic, racist, sexist, religious nuts.
But many of your politicians who display these frightful traits seem to be quite popular.
Particularly a certain wall-obsessed, small-handed, best-word-using, daughter-perving, war-inciting, candy-floss-headed clown.
To those of you who choose to follow such balderdash, we strongly recommend not to listen to the Two Skeptical Chaps.
It probably won't be your cup of tea.
Otherwise, give us a listen.
Each episode, we cover any news or current affairs from across the globe.
Things that annoy or delight us.
That's two, as in the number 2.
And skeptical with a K.
The wrong way to spell it. Cheerio!
Rejoining the Godless Rebelution podcast now.
Well, I had this conversation with my dad a while ago, and
this will be good.
Well, I mean, it's the death
Smoke
thing.
detectors.
He seems all consumed by it. I mean, before my sister died, they both had gone and picked out their plots in the cemetery. They picked out their headstones. They knew what they wanted on them. And I mean, it's one thing to plan for the eventuality of your death, right? But it was like, they got the plots. They got the headstones. They nailed down what they wanted in their obituaries. They, all of this shit that they bought their caskets. They picked out their own caskets and bought them. And, and we're spending
Did they climb in?
thousands and thousands of dollars.
Give them a test ride. Be like, this is pretty fucking comfy. Yeah. Not enough leg room.
Like that Simpsons episode where you got the TV screen on the headstone so you can see what's in the coffin. Yeah.
But I mean, so they've been super weird about it for a really long time. And whenever I see my dad and it's around a holiday, my sister died, a few years ago, earlier this month. Her birthday is the October 30th. So October kind of sucks being in my family who is fascinated by death and likes to think about it all the time. And invariably, when I see my dad sometime around this time of year, it's, well, have you gone up to see, did you see the headstones? Did you go up to the cemetery? Did you see your sister's headstone? No, I didn't. Well, why not? Why don't you go up there? Because that's not me. If you want to do that, that's fine. I think it's a little weird, but I'm not going to tell you have to stop.
Yeah.
But every time I see him, it's, well, you need to go up there and you need to pay your respects. And I'm like, no, I really don't. There's nobody there. Even like you mentioned earlier, Matt, why the fuck would she be hanging out at her gravestone just, oh gosh, nobody's coming to see me?
What a terrible
is she
way to
fucking
think about her.
chained to it or something,
What, I'm going to try to nerd. So, Moaning Myrtle? Moaning?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Harry
So,
Potter
yeah.
chick, right? I know that one.
Well, and he's like, well, you're making me think that when I die, you're not going to come and visit my grave. And I'm like, don't just think it, know it.
Why would you?
I'm not going to fucking do that.
Yeah.
If you want somebody to visit your grave after you're dead, you're going to have to pay somebody or be nice to somebody else.
The Simpsons has that
because
too.
I'm
You
not
can
going to
hire
fucking do it.
Do it. Just hire a woman to come cry in his grave.
And you mentioned there was a word in there too that kind of grabbed my attention. I think probably because of what's going on right now, but at least in the sports ball world, respect. This whole idea of pay your respects.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that even mean in this context?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah, it's
Are you going to still think about me, son, and make your whole life and take time out of your day to still come and do the shit I want you to do?
That's what it means. It's not respect. It's
control.
Submission.
Yeah.
Submit to me when I'm dead. You better.
Well, it's like, I don't see you that often now that, you're alive and I don't see you that often.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there on the anniversary of your death, your birthday, each fucking holiday. I don't see you that often now.
Right.
I'm not going to go there when you're fucking dead.
I think that's part of the reason my grandma...
I don't respect you now. So
my last grandparent that died this year, she was a hardcore Christian. I stayed in her room after she died. And I'm looking around all the books she had on her shelf. She had 3 different books by John Hagee and Jim Baker and stuff. And I'm like, fuck, I didn't realize she was this religious because she was pretty hardcore, cool when I was a little kid. Totally into computers and programming and shit. Really cool lady. And then I'm looking at all these books, but she donated her body to science, and she's like, hey, when I'm gone, don't put a placard anywhere. Don't put anything by gravestones. Don't bury me next to that asshole husband that I had for X amount of years. Like, just remember me in your own brains. Don't remember me in all these other fucking wastes of money. And yet the family couldn't listen, and they had to buy a stupid little marker to put next to Grandpa. And it's just like,
dude, that's what death teaches you, is how many people, like, oh man, there is no greater like teacher of human behavior and what your family's really like than when somebody dies. And
oh man,
the fights over money, whether or not they respect the wishes of the dead. Like, to me, fuck you, dude. If the dead say, I want you to like stash my body up a tree and scare children with it, like, how much do you care about the dead? Like really, you want to talk about fucking respect? Okay, you want to talk about respect for the dead. You want to talk about, all that. Okay, well, you better do what if I tell you I don't want a service, if I tell you I don't want a funeral and a marker, do that. If you love me, do that. And then people will often, because a lot of times mourning is about the living, but a lot of us don't acknowledge that. And so there's, I don't know, again, I think if we were more honest about death in our culture, we wouldn't be having that kind of, my dad fought hard for that stuff too, where he constantly told us like, pine box, no funeral, nothing, no obituary. I don't want anybody to know I'm dead. Fuck all these guys. If I don't talk to them, then they don't need to know. Like, they're not in my life. And, he ended up getting cremated, and we just did all that. It was a tiny thing. And because who the fuck am I to tell you what you want done with your death? Like, that you've been thinking about that a while. It's your whole thing. It's your story. It's your end. I don't give a shit. Like, I'll find my way to mourn you. This service alone that's a whole process I'm going to have to go through.
We're not going to resolve all of that with this one, with this one event.
Like a 3-hour thing, right? Yeah. Like, so but the control people have, and I think that death really is that big ass reminder that we have zero control. And so people try to grab what they can and sometimes they just plow right over the dead people as far as their wishes. And it really sucks. Like, if you stop and think about it, I don't think that's what. Well, it's definitely not what your grandma probably wanted.
I'm really thankful that she paid for all those single malts that I had at dinner that night, and the cigar that we had. Except for that's the night that I finally came out to my dad about being atheist. I mean, he kind of had a feeling, but he saw me wince every time someone was like, "Oh, she's in a better place." I'm like, "No, she's dead, guys. Ain't nothing going on."
That might be a better place, though, guys.
Yeah,
Trump's not president there.
When they saw me wince like that, and I'm like, "Look, guys, I'm atheist. I probably haven't been saying it as much as I should be. I'm not ashamed of it or anything. It's just, it's not something I wanted to burden you guys with at this time. I've been quiet about the whole thing." And I got the whole condescending, "Well, you're still young. Yeah, right. You still have a lot to experience in this life." I'm like, fucker, I'm here I flew 3,000 miles to be here to visit somebody that died. You mean I got to do more living than this? What do you, do I need to be assaulted by somebody to find God? What the fuck do you mean by that? I'm 37. I ain't going to learn new shit, really.
Wait, they were saying that when you were 37?
Yeah, when I went this year.
Oh.
You're still young. Crazy. I'm like, I'm not fucking young.
They always pull that shit when they don't have anything else to pull.
But then again, the average age between the four of us were there was like 56 or something like that. So I had some older folks that were there. It was like, yeah, you guys are old school Southern Baptist Christians. And so,
man.
Yay.
Sounds like your grandma was living a life that's sort of miles away from Jim Baker and Hagee, though. Yeah. I mean, why read those books?
I don't. Maybe they were just decorated. Maybe she got them given to her a long time ago. I don't know, but
I had a lot of books on my shelf. I wouldn't agree.
You wouldn't think a hardcore Christian would donate their body to science,
right?
And if they did,
that's awesome.
If they did, that's pretty fucking progressive. And I give her props to that every time I think about her. I'm like, damn, some medical student learned how to do medicine based on your body. I'm like, that's an inspiration. I finally got the cojones to be an organ donor this year. And I think also I got the balls to finally go, you know what? I don't give a shit what happens to my body when I'm dead.
Nice.
I'm just going to donate it. So
hell yeah, dude.
Maybe that doesn't work for my family, but fuck them. This is my body. I'll put it in my will. And whatever they do after
they should have respect for you when you're dead and follow your wishes.
Right. They should.
They go hang out at your cemetery 2 hours a day, every day.
Well, even my wife's not religious, but she's like, I'm like, I want to be cremated. She's like, nope. I'm like, fuck you. It's my body.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that's interesting too, though, there seems to be a huge overlap in people who are using the word respect a lot in their everyday vocabulary. Are what they mean is traditional. You know, people who tend to be more progressive don't really use respect in that way a lot of time. You know what I mean? Like,
we don't follow social norms all the time.
Right. And so if you're talking about doing something non-traditional, they're unlikely to respect that, because those two things kind of go together for them. So it's like, I'll respect him by doing the traditional thing.
My kids want to turn me into a tree. They saw one of those things.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, those are awesome.
Oh, I like that.
Well, but it's interesting. I mean, we keep talking about respect for the wishes of the dead and everything. So my sister was a terrible person when she was alive. She had a lot of mental health issues and was just a pretty rotten person to be around. She had tried killing herself when she was younger and had shot herself with a .22 in the chest, and it just bounced all around, in rib cage, spine, everything. Went through her aorta, right through the middle of her aorta, bounced all around, ended up lodged in her spine, but I mean, it damaged.
That's like the worst caliber you can
off yourself.
Yeah,
because it just bounced all over inside there, screwed up a bunch of her internal organs, lodged in her spine, so then she was paraplegic. And, she had mental problems before all of this, and then being confined to a wheelchair and in constant pain just exacerbated all of that. And then because she was in pain, getting hooked on painkillers. And I mean, and she was just a miserable fucking person.
Yeah.
And, basically was committing passive suicide for the next decade after her one major failed attempt.
So is she one of those across the street instead of down the road kind of suiciders where it's like...
No, I think she tried cutting her wrist once. She tried overdosing a few different times. She shot herself.
But never...
She tried crashing her car into a tree. She tried putting a pipe in. She ran a hose into the window of her car. I mean...
Holy fuck, man.
Yeah, and then she ended up getting bladder cancer and was like, hallelujah! I don't want any treatment. I'm going to fucking die this time.
Life dysphoria.
Yeah.
Something like that. Jeez.
Yeah. So, I mean, she was just a miserable fucking person. And she and my dad got along like two peas in a pod because they're both pretty fucking miserable people. They like would commiserate in their misery, and so when she died, I mean, I'd have to go into a whole bunch of history, but she had a falling out with my mom and my grandmother, my mom's mom. And so she told my dad, apparently, before she died, that she didn't want my mom or my grandmother at her funeral. Mm-hmm. And so my dad tells me this, so she dies. He calls me to help come make the final arrangements. We're going to meet at the mortuary or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just call mom and let her know. And he's like, well, she's not welcome to come. And I'm like, fuck you. She's going to come. She's hurting more about this than you probably are because the reason that my sister and my mom had a falling out was largely due to him because he called me in a panic because she had tried to kill herself again and he's bawling on the phone. He doesn't know what to do because she's living with him and he doesn't know day to day if he's going to come home and she's dead because she was living with him when she shot herself. He's the one who found her. And then, every day after that, when she's back home, he's terrified of what he's going to find when he's there. She tried killing herself again. She drank brake fluid. It was anything. Like, I don't know how many times she tried to kill herself. So he calls me in a panic because she's in the hospital. He doesn't know what to do. He's at his wit's end. He's bawling to me. And I'm like, I can't do anything as her brother. You would have to be you or mom as, she's living with you. Mom is also a parent. I'll call her, see what she can do. So my mom, knowing that my dad, my sister's living with my dad. So she knows that he doesn't want to be the bad guy because my sister's going to have to come back with him. So my mom goes in and tries to have my sister committed for a little while so that she can get some mental help. And my dad was, whenever she went to any psychiatric ward or anything, he's like, mental health stuff is stupid and that's a bunch of bullshit and it's a waste of time and money.
I wonder why she was so sick all the time.
Yeah. So my sister finds out about this and, gets in this huge fight with my mom. My dad, I guess, is there and my mom's like, your dad is terrified because he doesn't know what's going on and you clearly tried to kill yourself again. And my sister's denying it the whole time. And then my dad lied about it. No, that's not what I said. I'm not worried about it. She can come home with me, whatever. Like totally threw my mom under the bus. And so my sister wrote off my mom and my grandmother all because of my dad who was being a fucking coward and a shithead about it. And then my sister dies and he wants to tell my mom that she can't come to the funeral.
Right.
And I'm like, motherfucker, that's not happening. Mom is coming. my grandmother's coming. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Mindy's fucking dead. You have a choice here. You can choose to be a fucking asshole and not allow my mom to come, or you can choose to be a decent fucking human being and let her mourn and come to the funeral.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm like, if you don't allow them to come, I'm fucking done with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's it. I watched this whole shit show for the last several years as you threw her under the bus, and she took all of that and was made the pariah in Mindy's eyes because of what you did, and now you're going to punish her when she's dead? I mean, you're a fucking piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom and my grandmother were able to come to the funeral.
That's good.
But yeah, it was this, I had to get in a huge fight with my dad and my grandmother. And like I said, so around this time of year, it's like a fucking nightmare in my family.
Yeah, that should suck.
Yeah.
I don't want to make light of your shitty dead sister.
Oh, please do.
In my mind, I was thinking, man, that would be a time for an unskeptical mind to go, there might actually be a God, right? Like looking down and just feeling like, Jesus, I think we took that imperfection thing a little too far. Like fucking cancer. Let's get this over with. Holy shit.
Yeah. It was crazy. So this time of year is always crazy. And it's also Gray's birthday toward the end of the year, right?
Yeah, much more.
Or
pleasant.
toward the end of the month. His birthday's the 21st. He turned 24 years old this year. Awesome, fantastic kid. I love him to fucking pieces.
Yeah.
He's just the coolest. I don't know how I got so fortunate in having such an awesome kid. But so his birthday is around, and usually we have a birthday party where we get all of the family together, both my mom and my dad and my so it's this weird, awkward thing. And Gray didn't really want to have anything to do with that this year. And so he's like, I don't want to party. I'm just going to visit with individual people. That'll be fine. And my grandmother kept trying to call me. And I know that Gray had contacted her and told her that he wasn't having a party, whatever. But my grandmother kept trying to contact me. And because it's right around the time that my sister had died and I haven't spoken to my dad for a few months, it's like, I'm wondering, is it she's calling me because I didn't call him on the anniversary of Mindy's death, or, when she got sick, or, I haven't checked on my dad to see how he's like, it's going to be something to guilt me because that's what my family's huge into. So I didn't bother answering the phone when she called, and she would call and leave messages, and she would never tell me what she wanted. So then in my mind, it's, clearly she wants to guilt me into something. And so she called like 3 times, 3 days in a row. And beyond that, I'm just super fucking busy, right? Like calling and talking to somebody on the phone is like the last thing I do with anybody. I don't call Tracy on the phone to talk to her. I send her text messages, let her know what's going on. She can read them. I can reply when I have a minute, what to do, whatever. Talking on the phone, I just...
Yeah, same here.
I don't do.
Hate it.
How dare you call me?
So my grandmother, and I love my grandmother. She's my sweet, tiny little LDS grandmother. I've mentioned it, I think, several times on the show that she's very LDS, and if she's not in church on Sunday, it's because she's gambling in Wendover. But so I don't return her calls, and Sunday I'm sitting in the kitchen and I get a Facebook message from her, and it says, "Hi, sweetheart. I do not know what I have done that you are not returning my calls. The only thing I have done is love you from the first time you opened your eyes.
Wow.
And I will love you till I close mine for the last time.
That is some...
If you feel like it, I would love to talk to you. Much love, Grandma."
It's right out the gate. Like,
and I was like,
escalated
holy
very quickly.
Shit. You're laying it on a little thick, Grandma.
Jesus.
You heartless bastard.
But yeah, so I mean, I sent her a reply and just said, I'm sorry I didn't return your call. I'm really busy. I've got a ton of things going on. You've called and left messages. I haven't returned your call. So then I call her, and I mean, it was just none of that. She asked about Gray's plans and just how I was doing, and then that she was worried that she had upset me somehow. And
no.
I'm like, no, Grandma, I love you too. I'm sorry I made you feel bad, but
I wonder if back in the day, that's just why, like, people just didn't recall. Like, if you didn't respond back to somebody's calls, you just hated them. Because man, that generation, if you don't call them back, they
how
really
old
think
is
you
she?
hate them.
Just celebrated her 80th birthday in July.
So she's a silent generation.
Yeah.
She's just ahead of the boomers, who are almost all selfish assholes.
That's true.
That do this kind of shit.
Oh, she's always been big into guilt, like as far back as I can remember. Always. But she's like, I don't even think she's 5 feet tall anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Teeny tiny.
Shrink. It's so cute.
We call her Grandma Cupcake, and it's not meant as a pejorative. Like, she's just super sweet, but yeah, always huge into guilt trips. I don't know.
There's a lot of power in that.
In guilt trips?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
there can be if
you let them have
the right people.
If the people are swayed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and to her,
but clearly in this case it worked.
Yeah. You did write her back.
Well, it's like,
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Yeah.
I know.
I didn't really. So I'm standing there in the kitchen, and Tracy and Gray are there, and I'm like, oh my God. Tracy says, what? And I'm like, you should see this fucking message that I just got from my grandmother. And I read it to her, and she's like, you have to call her back. Like, why haven't you called? You're a shitty grandson. You have to call her back.
It's more like a shit cupcake with frosting on top, really, though. It's like sweet, but also nasty. Like, you know.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the guilt thing. I just, like, I'm such a direct person, and some people are, I don't know about your grandma, but some people that pull this are really needy in ways that I'm not. And it's not a judgment thing. It's literally just like, I don't need people that hard as a person. So I don't, like, my dad was like that, where I think it was just more of a control thing, right? Because it's like the whole gender dynamic and stuff. He was really shitty with sexism. So he would literally, if I didn't answer his calls, he'd just call like 20 times in a row until I answered him. And at some point you just give in, because it's like, Jesus Christ. But it is a weird, like,
it's very unhealthy.
It is. It's not. And I just don't need to talk to that many people.
Yeah.
I don't need that much contact. Like, whatever you're getting out of it, reassurance or just company or stimulation. Like, if I can go my whole day with only just like talking to my coworkers and my fiance and my cats, that's like the best day in the world. Maybe not the coworkers, because it's a Saturday, right? Just the home people. Great. So it's really hard when you're a person like that, to explain that to people who aren't, because they really don't seem to. They really take it personally. And it's so hard to talk through that and be like, it's not. Do you understand? Sometimes I just don't want to talk to anybody. It has it does not matter how much I love you. It really, really doesn't.
Yeah. No, but I know you don't want to talk to anybody, but I'm different.
Yeah.
You want to talk to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's me. You clearly want to talk to me.
Right. And if I'm included in that, everybody, then I really am hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it is. They don't like that they're not above
priority.
Thing. And sorry, I'm not going to lie to you to make you feel better, because that's to me, that's a break of my virtues. Like,
yeah.
I don't feel like that's fair. I want to be honest with you about where you are in my life. I don't want you to have a false expectation. That's just going to set you up for pain later. That's bullshit.
Well, and in my reply, so, I send her the reply, and I'm like, I'm super busy. I'm spinning way too many plates. I got your messages, but you never said what you needed. And so really in the list of things that I've got to do, that remained at the lower part of the list. And so I told Tracy what I had sent back, and she's like, Jesus Christ, there's a better way to put that. And I'm like, but there's not a better way that I could be like more honest with her about it, other than to be really blunt and say, I didn't want to fucking talk to you because I was worried you're going to bitch about me not talking to dad around Mindy's death day and going to see the grave and all of that kind of bullshit that I want nothing to do with.
Mm-hmm.
Often I see that with the guilt thing, where what they're really afraid of, it almost seems like, is that you are going to bring up that thing that would make you not want to talk to him. Like, she's got to know that she pulls that shit. She's got to know that maybe you were afraid that she was going to guilt you. And maybe that's what that is her being like, that's not what I was calling for. And instead of saying that, she went this route. Like, how do they can't not know what they do.
That's interesting.
No.
Well, I'm sure she does know, because, I ended up yelling the F word at her on the phone in not dealing.
Cupcake.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Me screaming fuck at my grandmother on the phone, talking about my dad and what a fucking coward he was. And she doesn't know what the fuck is going on, and she needs to mind her own fucking business. And yeah, my grandmother hung up on me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I'm
I
sure.
was screaming, I was screaming the F word at her.
What's that thing they say about gingers? no soul, right? Or something?
Yeah.
Wonder how that came about.
It just makes me think that
fucking yelling at your 80-year-old grandmother you call Cupcake.
She wasn't 80 at the time. She was 70 something.
Oh, okay.
This makes me think the boomer generation should also be called the "It's not about you" generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
But
that
you're
comes
gonna
up
make it
so
about you.
Yeah, that
much,
works
yeah.
either way.
Yeah.
If you're talking to them or if you're doing an impression of what they say to everyone else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So projection.
Fuck you, got
So
mine.
projection. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Phil Ferguson of the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show, and thank God you're listening to the Godless Rebelution.
Oh, I love God. He's so deliciously evil.
Please stand by. The Godless Rebelution will continue in a moment.
Hey, everybody, we're the Utah Outcasts, and we want you to listen to our show.
We're a rowdy bunch of super liberal atheists that reside in the state of Utah, who bring you current events and featured content on a semi-weekly basis.
Whether it's us poking fun at the religious right or ranting at the world in which we all reside, we want to borrow your ears for about an hour twice a week.
Hey, and don't forget to tell them the best part about it.
Oh, yeah!
The show's free for all.
It is indeed, so if you like free, we're available through iTunes, Overcast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, Google Play, Patreon, and even in full HD video via YouTube. Give us a listen. You won't be sorry.
Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
Going back to your talk about the Crucible of Goodness, one of the things that seemed to be a bit of a central theme was the whole aspect of ancient peoples having this knowledge that is now hidden to us or has been lost to the ages in history or whatever. And my note here was just that it's interesting to me, this vague notion that people have of ancient peoples and that they had access to some sort of knowledge or power which has been somehow lost in time and history, and that it's not only been lost, but is some kind of dark and sinister knowledge. And maybe that's why it's been lost or hidden or forgotten. It wasn't that it was just lost and we need to try to regain it. It was lost on purpose.
Right, it was like buried.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
How much of that do you think is influenced by our current culture? That we have this projection that we're putting onto these people in the past, that they had this hidden knowledge that may have been dark, and we need to not seek that knowledge. They had it, and there were sinister things going on, and we need to avoid that wherever possible.
Right. Well, if you think about it in the way, if you incorporate it with ideas like white supremacy and colonialism and imperialism, right? This is another way for those systems to do their job. If you believe that a culture holds like only dark secrets, it makes sense why they got destroyed by your superior white culture. It makes sense why you wouldn't go digging up their histories. It makes sense why you wouldn't take their religion seriously, because they're all evil, which makes no sense. That makes zero. That's really what, like, even as a kid, studying religion, what I was trying to wrangle with was this. I don't know about you guys, but I got this real perspective growing up here and growing up just even slightly influenced by Mormonism, that Christianity was the start of history. And even though you were aware, like, Egypt and Greece and Rome are things,
or at least of any history that's worth writing down.
Right. And even though you have these ideas of these things that existed before Christianity, for me, they kind of existed free floating in space, like in this, they weren't contextualized. I didn't have a solid reasoning of how we got from Egypt or Rome or Greece to Christianity and what happened to those civilizations and why their religions didn't survive. And so it's like this idea of hidden knowledge from especially ancient sources. We see it in Ancient Aliens. We see it in like the Lost Continent of Atlantis. Ancient Aliens is racist as shit. Okay. The whole premise on that thing is the idea that non-white people can't build civilization. That's bullshit. We have civilizations all over the world that have been built by non-white people. We have proof all over Africa. It's just stupid. It's just colonialism, still digging its heels in to just promote the idea that only white people have culture. And only white people have non-evil culture, or history worth remembering. And if you remember how much of indigenous culture and non-white culture we've just erased, I think this idea of making a mystery out of it is a kind of a cultural way that people have dealt with this lack of knowledge and this gap in our understanding. Because I think we have this idea that we don't really know. There's some holes in the way that we hear history when we hear about Columbus, when we hear about the history of the West and America even. And I think it's just part of our natural inclination to be like, well, we know other places existed. We know that other empires got in contact with people. We know these things. So what happened to them? And they go, oh, well, they were evil. And they had all this dark knowledge. And so they obviously got destroyed by our God. All was our God. All was the Christian God, destroys them. And our civilization has survived because we are superior and we're moral and we look at science. We don't worry about superstition. We're not out here doing crazy demon ritual and stuff. We're just eating our dead God, but it's fine. That's different.
We're not filthy heathens.
We're
savages.
Not heathens. Dance around a fire. We just eat our God. It's fine. It's different.
An example of that was brought to my knowledge when I visited Cancun, and they had this park that was there. It was like the Disneyland of Cancun, whatever the fuck it was. It was like a nature park kind of thing. And we went to this pageant thing at the end of it, and they had everybody dressed up in like traditional Mayan costumes and everything. And they talk about how Christianity came to them and how it changed everything, and everybody was venerating it. The thing, and I'm like, oh God, how sad.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's a lot of people that in this country, they go, well, look what happened to the Mayans. They just all disappeared. They just went away.
Yeah.
It's like, no, they were just colonized, guys.
Yeah.
They were the aliens.
Partly.
Right. The aliens came and took them back because they gave them all that knowledge and they were like, well, now you owe us and now y'all have to come with us.
Be like,
and
hey, they're still there. It's like
they're still Mayans, dude. They're still here.
What happened to the Neanderthals? Have you seen Ken Ham?
Yeah, dude. I met a Mayan. We went down last year to, where did we go for my friend's wedding? Damn it. I guess Cancun. Yeah, but we went on a tour to Tulum.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was a real ass Mayan. They just live off the grid because again, the colonialist government has.
He's a real ass.
He was real as hell. He was straight up Mayan, whole
T-shirt idea right there.
Real ass Mayan.
Real ass Mayan. He was great, super nice. Yeah, and he told us all about how they live off the grid, how the women who give birth, their kids don't have birth certificates or the equivalent of social security numbers or really any paper trail. Like these indigenous people still live out there. The colonial government has just basically shoved them off in the equivalent of reservations, it sounds like. And I don't know how they compare it to how we treat our indigenous people on the reservations, but it's probably pretty similar.
Well, because they're a bunch of bad hombres.
Right. Just raping and packing pot over the border.
I assume some of them are good.
Some of them.
I guess.
Sure, not to go too far off on the rabbit trail, but did you guys see the dumbass Stonehenge that we got going on the Mexican border right now, where they have the model walls set up that Trump paid for? I don't know what kind of Stonehenge they're calling it, but they built mock-ups of the walls that Trump wants for the border, and they have like 4 or 5 of them.
They're the see-through one.
I haven't seen that one yet, but it's just funny that they're like,
gotta watch out for those.
Look at these. They're 30 feet.
Those drug bags.
They're 30 feet tall. Look at them. They're impressive. And like, it's being completely lost on them that there's a drone flying over this, taking pictures of it and everything. I'm like, that's how they're going to smuggle things, you dumbasses. Ooh, 30-foot wall. I have a drone and a ladder.
And they've been building tunnels for quite a while also. So I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that, you know what? That actually, well, it says 2 things, but it does speak to what you were just talking about, that how fucking dumb do they think the Mexicans are?
Why do you think, why does our capitalist nation think the Mexican drug smugglers are going to work any less hard to get money than our fucking capitalists do?
Yeah.
And break any more laws and find any other ways around regulations?
Right.
Why? You do it? You guys break fucking laws and destroy the economy all the time.
Right.
Why would they? Did they get it out around a wall?
But we're really smart and our skin isn't brown.
Right,
so.
but it's God wanted it this way.
We don't have that natural handicap.
And these people that bring up this whole false equivalence you can't say it's such a false equivalence, but when they try to say if you regulate guns, they're just going to be in the black market and everybody's just going to buy guns. Don't you remember what happened with liquor? It's like, yeah, it's the same shit that's going on with drugs.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys were to make those legal, we wouldn't have to pay cartels.
We wouldn't need the wall, idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there'd be nothing to smuggle over because it would be legal. And they would just go through a checkpoint like all fucking customs, you idiots. No. And that, it really is. It's about control. It's not about.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's disgusting.
Well, and older cultures and societies had different boundaries than we have now. They weren't. I can't speak to any in particular, and I'm sure you would know much, much more about it than I would. But it's my understanding that a lot of ancient cultures didn't have this stigma against homosexuality or being sexually promiscuous or...
Yeah, they fell in different places. It totally depended on, like, Rome had different variations. Like, obviously, Greece had homosexual activity, and obviously some pedophilic activity, which we would not endorse today. You've got, in Rome, you had things like the Vestal Virgins who literally had to stay virgins their whole lives, and if they didn't, they were buried alive. You've got,
what would it?
Whoa.
The Vestal Virgins who kept the fire going in the temples, in the Vestal temples. It was a for life position. And they actually had a lot of power for women in Rome, and it was the kind of thing where if they, man, I can't remember if it was releasing criminals, but it was the kind of thing if they saw like a criminal procession or whatever and decided to just free one of them, they could. Like, they had a lot of power for what they were, but the cross of that being, if anybody found out they compromised their purity, they would literally just bury these women alive. So
a lot of power for a woman in Rome. That's like what would it be?
Yeah.
The head of church education who happens to be a woman in the LDS church. Like
Right.
a lot of power for being a woman in the LDS church.
Rome was just certainly patriarchal. But yeah, it was just different boundaries around death, different boundaries around the concept of dying for a god was something like Romans wouldn't have, like, nobody's going out and dying for Zeus. That's stupid. They go out and die for Rome, for a city and a wall and profits and crops and their families that make sense. But their concept of death didn't demand they died for a god or for death, right? That's why Caesar was so surprised when he met the Celts and they had crazy berserker guys running into battle naked and nuts because they had a concept of reincarnation. They weren't afraid of death like the Romans were. So, because they thought they were just going to get reincarnated. They had all these human sacrifice stuff, which again, Rome was really not into because they didn't have a concept of really the afterlife or reincarnation in the way we think about it. So, to sacrifice a person, I think we found a temple, some archaeology, of a sacrifice below like one temple altar. And that was a really big deal when they found it because again, that was a desperate move. We're in the midst of a huge war and we've got all sorts of economic problems and we really need some God's help. But typically they didn't sacrifice people, but the Celts did. And that was just part of their culture. That's why I think part of why Christianity took so hard of a hold in Rome is I think they would have naturally been kind of blown away by people who would die for a god. And even though the Christian sacrifice and the whole Roman sacrifice in Christian is really overblown historically, like we don't have a lot of proof that Rome was persecuting Christians to the level that is kind of popular in myth, like throwing them to lions and shit.
Well, Christians love that.
They do.
They love a good
persecution
story.
Yeah, there's a whole book that came out within the last 10 years.
Spank me.
Looking at that, yeah. So I'm not saying no Christians got persecuted. I just don't think we have historical proof to show it was to the level that we've thought before. But Romans would have been a little perplexed at the idea of people dying for a god. And so I think some people would have been naturally curious to learn about that, and it might have been even convincing. That plus Rome's roads. The infrastructure they'd already built for a missionary system and what have you. Like, it's crazy to me how monotheism caught hold just then, because it wasn't even like the first time it was tried. And yet that was the time it really stuck and got stuck in people's throats. But yeah, boundaries have been different. They're different across all cultures. And I think the American, especially, like, we've gotten so dominant that our mistake is that we don't ever really have to think about any other culture's boundaries. But other people's cultures do. Like, immigrants have to. Immigrants know, like, white mainstream culture boundaries as well as their own because they have to survive. Whereas us in white culture in America, we kind of don't have to. Like, that asshole dude is like, why would you want to go learn about possession and blah, blah, blah? Because he doesn't fucking have to. He never has to know this stuff to exist. And that's really what white supremacy protects is we don't ever have to know what anybody else does. We just know what we do and everybody better fall in line. It's a dominance thing.
Yeah. Why would I have to learn anything other than that I'm fucking awesome?
Right. You adapt your shit to me. And maybe I'll learn about your shit if I feel like it. But I also don't have to, so.
Like I saw a tweet the other day from an African-American guy who said that an old white lady told him he looked like a thug on the bus on his way to graduate school for his third degree.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, and that's the shit,
That's a boundary problem.
Yep, that is a boundary problem, yeah. So our Christianity has created our specific boundaries that tell us what to be afraid of. And that's kind of what we talked about in the talk, right? Is just illustrating what those boundaries look like and how they manifest in horror movies, because they can manifest a lot of different ways depending on your little subgenre, like slasher, basic monster, or space horror, or whatever.
Is gore a category? It should be. I thought about that today.
What
I'm
is-
like
gore?
like gorer, like just gore. Like slashers, I think would fit in gorer because they're not like really scary. They're just super bloody and nasty. Like Human Centipede
I
would be like a
consider that
gorer.
torture porn, is what I call
there you
it.
go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, then there's body horror, kind
Right,
of
which is
stuff
a whole.
that
That's like
happens
the
too.
Cronenberg shit.
Like Ichi the Killer.
What's that?
Takeshi Miike does really.
Who's
good,
that?
A Japanese director.
This is going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah, the idea of your body being like. Have you ever seen any Cronenbergs? Like,
David Cronenberg movie.
That does not sound like a Japanese name.
No, he does a lot of body horror of like. Do you ever watch Rick and Morty?
Yes.
The Cronenberg episode where everybody. That's what they were referencing is the body horror in Cronenberg's movies. Yeah.
When all of them turn into monsters and the only normal people are normal in air quotes there that are Morty and Rick. And they leave that existence because, like, fuck, we can't live. Well, no, they have the normal family there still.
Yeah, they turn the whole Cronenberg except their family, and they're like fucking survival. Oh
and they keep going back to it.
But yeah, that idea of your body morphing and becoming weird and unrecognizable, like that's a specific fear, right? That idea of you not being able to recognize your own physical form or it being out of control, right? Torture porn to me is always just that. You just want to watch blood and you just want to watch Hostel, like which was so disappointing. Like it just, I don't know, it just does nothing for me. I feel like that goes back to the death cult thing of just like, you just want to watch people get tortured? Okay, that's fucking weird. All right.
That's why I like bands like Gwar. I used to buy their VHS.
But Gwar's got some fucking self-awareness and some like,
they're awesome
they get it. They're awesome about it.
This is completely costumed bullshit, but people are buying into it.
And I wouldn't even say it's like upsetting. Like it's very tongue in cheek and it's very
cartoonish.
Whereas like stuff like Hostel and stuff like like Human Centipede and stuff, it's trying to fuck you up. And there's a certain part of me that resists that. I don't like when people are trying to make me upset or fuck me up, which I know sounds weird because I love horror. But the torture porn has this very specific quality to me that's like that edgelord, fucking alt-right Nazi bullshit. Like, I'm just going to say the most shocking thing to piss you off.
Well,
like,
yeah,
bro,
I can't be creative, so I'll be shocking.
Exactly. Thank you. Like, I can't build a narrative, so I'm just going to put a person through like the worst shit I can imagine. Like, that's. I'm a woman in America. Good luck. Good fucking luck shocking me, bro. Good luck shocking me with what men do to people and what men do to women. Like, oh, okay.
Well, then a lot of those movies are obviously directed by guys and from guys' point of view, when not realizing like ladies bleed on a monthly basis, so like they're constantly around that kind of stuff, and so guys are like, ooh, blood, ew, ew, ew.
Yep, yeah.
Well, but I mean. I don't want to call you out too hard on that, but like they're not frolicking in it, right? They're not tossing it around the room, splattering it on walls.
You don't know what we do when we're
However, as a one-time janitor at a hospital.
Oh, that's
I've seen some shit.
Yeah. Gross.
Literally. And one of my least favorite things, because I'm a dude that got oogied around that kind of stuff, was having to clean out that special little trash can next to the stalls in the ladies' room. It's just like, no.
Dudes you guys are also taught to just be grossed out by that. That's a cultural thing. You guys are taught like,
it's
like that there's grown men who get like grown men with fucking children who still get weirded out by this. To me is like, that is a fucking cultural failure, because this is, I cannot believe like the shit that women have to go through and put up with and do. And again, that's a privilege thing, like the white privilege. You guys don't have to fucking think about it. The culture is set up to where you guys get to just draw a line and be like, honey, that's gross, and nobody can do anything. Like,
everybody that I've known who had a huge problem with it, it was always the most conservative, most religious guys that I knew who were like, my wife, you went and picked up tampons for your wife at the store, and I'm like, yeah.
Did your dick fall off?
They're like, I won't even stand in line if she's got it in the basket.
That dude,
what
are you, 5?
Wow. Yeah.
Grow up. God damn.
Yeah. And I've got 3 preteen girls, so I'm about to be facing that pretty hardcore. So
you're going to be hip deep in tampons.
And it's really not that big a deal.
I'm going to buy the Costco family pack.
Fuck yeah.
Kirkland brand.
And I'll tell you that it's the weirdness that makes it way weirder for especially young women. Like, just chill. Just like, it's just a thing. It's just a shit. Like, literally every person with a uterus goes through this.
I've got one that's 9, and she's gonna butt early. We can tell. And
I hear that's happening a lot more in like the last couple generations.
Well, my wife did too, and so we just know it's in the family. And so we've talked to her. My wife's talked to her. I'm like, okay, well, you're being way too like super adulty words here. So let me use the clinical words with her. Let me explain things on a level that it's not talking down. It's not trying to make it weird or anything. It's like, this is something that's gonna happen. And as a guy, it's kind of weird that I feel that I'm being the one that has to explain bodily functions of females to my daughter. I mean, you think that's kind of like a rite of passage kind of thing, but
well, maybe you shouldn't have mansplained it over your wife.
no, she just. God damn it! I walked into that one. My wife wants me to have the birds and the bees talk too, because she's like, you can be clinical about it. I'm like, yeah.
She just get uncomfortable talking about it?
Yeah, she doesn't like talking about bodily functions and stuff and death and all these other things.
Hey, all those things we're taught not to fucking talk about.
Well, and she was brought up Mormon and I wasn't, so I mean, I don't know if that has something to do with it. But
oh yeah, probably.
Yeah, Mormons
it's very conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never got
especially being a girl growing up in the LDS church too.
Like that was the time I was in Mormonism. I don't remember a single like period talk or any of that like womanhood shit, any of it.
How dare you?
I mean, granted, it was tiny. It was a tiny period of time, but still, like you think it's sad
period of about 4 to 5 days.
See what I did there? Well, I meant to do that. I'm clever.
Well, and even in Mormonism, the ladies go to Relief Society when the men go to priesthood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I've always wondered about that. What is that like? Finally, we're away. We get a relief. We're away from like what is the point of calling it? What does that mean? Does anyone know what that means?
I thought was because they started as like a literal like charity organization.
Oh, okay,
so they were providing relief to like the community, which is why they're always the ones to do like when somebody dies, they're always making sure the family's fed for like a couple of weeks and stuff. I think, but we'd have to back that up.
Cookies on my front porch every once in a while.
They're keeping track. They're the ones keeping track and providing relief to the ward or the community, which is commendable. But again, why are the men fucking doing that too?
Well, it's like, here, we'll set up this whole little thing so you can do what you always have.
Right.
And what
you're good at baking because we make you. So why don't you just do more baking for
get
more
back
people?
in the kitchen. Get back in there.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to put a kitchen in our church.
We did. And then they did.
They did.
And then they fucking did. Oh, man. Did they have a kitchen in the temple, too? Because that would really nail it.
Bet you
I've only taken one temple tour before.
I think they do, but I don't think it's like for people to... I'm sure there's
not the big
one in
banquets,
there, but I don't think it's for...
Well, I mean, the octogenarians got to eat something. You know, they're not going to go to
Gotta.
McDonald's in their white suits. You know?
Well, and some of them are, some of those temples are probably like not going to clear. They seem to like clear the room around it, too, where there's not a lot of... It's almost in a neighborhood, and there are a lot of things around where you can go buy stuff. You have to eat, right?
Well, yeah, they usually buy it on an empty square of land somewhere.
Way up on a hilltop so it can be seen from miles.
It does look... That's where you put your best ruins, though, I gotta say. I would love to see some temple ruins, though, because like I love Roman ruins. I'd love to see what like Mormon temple ruins are going to look like. I wish
they're going to look...
Well, you've been to Cancun, right?
And...
all the Mayan ruins, you already know what Zarahemla looks like.
There you go.
I mean, that's where Mormonism is from and all the ancient stories.
Chichen Itza Zarahemla.
Fuck, dude.
Yeah.
My favorite part of that was that you could see on one of the ruins they had like a red handprint, and it was like an architecture signature, and they had the same stuff at like Machu Picchu and stuff. So that's so badass that they were still. You actually had like artist signatures on that shit.
Oh, that is cool.
I love stuff like that.
I just love seeing all the Mormon field trips going on down there when you're at these ancient ruins, and they're like, just to think the Lamanites used to live here.
God fucking damn it. I can't believe there's Mormon tours of this shit. They're telling this history. I'm blown away. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They see the winged serpent, they're like, that means Jesus.
But the church the church does not take an official position on the geography of because they can't place the Book of Mormon on Earth, obviously. But they definitely do encourage
they can't put it in North America anymore. We've got lots of things that go, no, that didn't exist here.
Well, they still do with the Hill Cumorah in upstate New York. They own
still,
that.
Yeah, and they still have on their videos like Joseph actually translating plates in front of him. I subscribe to a channel called Hard to Find Mormon Videos, and I watched the Three Witnesses one the other day, and I'm like, God damn, like their official line doesn't even match this shit anymore. And like people, oh, it's true. He had a sheet between him, and he read these golden plates, and he translated them. He didn't have the breastplate with the stones on it or anything either. I'm like,
I almost had a
he didn't have a hat with a rock or anything.
They would have been smart to ditch the whole Hill Cumorah thing early on. Now it's a thing and they can't.
It's latched onto it.
But according to the story, Moroni was the last one to hold the brass plates before he buried them in the hill.
That's a long way to take them.
Yes. So that's a long fucking way to go from Cancun to walk all the way to New York.
Plus, why leave Cancun to... Why? It's beautiful.
Well, he was
there.
being hunted, so
the Lamanites were after him.
The Lamanites, for sure.
Fucking lame.
Well, I made the mistake of going to a festival they were doing at Northridge one time, where it was Fiesta Lamanita, And I'm like, what is this? And she's like, oh, no, don't worry about it. It's cool. People just dress up in costumes and they got good Mexican food. And I'm like, cool. And then I found out the reasoning behind it. I'm like, oh my God. You guys really believe that Mexico and like all the Native Americans were...
Man, I hadn't heard about it like being relocated to Mexico. I've always known it as like our indigenous red people right here, but I hadn't heard about it being shifted to... Man,
South American temples and stuff.
God damn it!
Yeah.
And again, this is a failure. If our
wait, you studied anthropology and history, and you've never heard this before?
Not about the Mormons. No, fuck, jeez. Well,
wait.
You think
right now is the first time you're hearing about them taking that, like
the South Americans.
I was totally familiar with them. That was their reasoning for like American indigenous people. I guess I hadn't heard that they had started to apply the Lamanite story to Mayans and stuff, honestly.
My favorite is the tapirs that they consider the horses.
Those must have been the horses, because the Book of Mormon clearly talks about them riding horses into war, and so horses weren't here. Well, then tapirs were.
There's a T-shirt that has a tapir on it, and it says horse underneath it, and I want one so bad.
This is why we have to do this basic history in our classes, because something's got to challenge this fucking narrative. Because this is all Mormon. If this is all Mormon kids are hearing, like, no wonder. Like, we're like 50th in education. Yeah.
It'd be like riding a war golden retriever into battle.
Oh my God.
Or all of these.
They're not much. They're about the same size as a tapir.
The steel scimitars, as they're talking about, and it's like, where the fuck are the foundry ruins?
Yeah, I'm not sure Mayans were producing steel.
They were not.
Yeah.
No, nobody.
They were not.
They were.
There's so many anachronisms that don't match up, and this book is true. I know it to
and we
be
just have a whole history of the Mayans. Like, we have a whole thing about explaining their entire thing and with their calendar and all sorts of stuff that's like nothing. God damn it.
Yeah, they have whole stories and stories about 100,000 people dying in a battle that all had metal armor and swords and shields. Never been found.
Not a single piece.
They've talked to natives who have said, well, according to our stories, the first time we ever saw metal was like in the 1600s when they brought coins, and we used to just flatten them out and make them into jewelry, wear them on a necklace. We didn't know what the fuck,
Yeah, because they wouldn't have those current. Yeah.
Yeah, they had no idea. That wasn't,
Yeah,
they weren't exactly smelting iron sands.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's why this shit, the ancient alien shit, this idea, it's that fucking white supremacy thing that brown people can't do things for themselves, and they can't. If something got built, if something got big, it was because of white people. It's just so fucking frustrating, dude. It's so easy to refute. It takes nothing, literally nothing. I can get you on Google Earth right now and show you shit in Africa and stuff that you've never seen, that nobody talks about being built, and for hundreds of years, well, maybe not hundreds now, but early anthropology was just like, oh, well, it must have been white people. We're gonna have to find the white people that came down here. Like, we're talking in Zimbabwe, like Great Zimbabwe, the ruins there. I don't know if you know how far down in the huge ass continent of Africa Zimbabwe is.
Yeah.
But they're still trying to justify how somehow Europeans got down
just a country,
here.
right?
It's just this country that's like
it's all one
half of America.
It would be nice to get a map that actually reflects how big Africa really fucking is.
That's another way that we
it has
encourage
big water
this
around
thing.
it.
Ocean
a lot
water.
of big water. It's deep. It's
deep water.
Yeah, it's hard to get there. I don't think we can. It's on the moon, basically. Fuck, dude. But that stuff. If you're working so hard to explain why white people built this, maybe just consider for a fucking second that they goddamned it. And why would white people travel this far to just like it's just so much? They just want to strangle.
Why do you hate white people?
Well, I think that's fairly obvious. What's to like? We're doing terrible.
Not all white people.
Yeah.
Like, if you're offended by it, we are talking about you. If we're not, if you're not offended by it, we're not talking.
If you got a problem, I implore you to just please look inside your heart and punch yourself in the face, and then go read a history book and just calm down about white people.
I hope someone comments something like that.
Oh,
I really liked it, but I felt you were being a little bit racist at the end, like something like that.
Like, I can be more if you want me to talk about white people more. I could definitely do that.
They're getting into my wheelhouse. We got to have you on our show.
Hi, this is Thomas Westbrook, and I have a YouTube channel called Holy Kool-Aid, where I take topics and I break them down in 5 or 10 minute videos, trying to give a laser-focused perspective on religion, philosophy, and science. And you are listening to the Godless Rebelution podcast.
The problem is to have a way of thinking about the world that doesn't allow you to reliably navigate because you are not basing your worldview on evidence and argument. That's the problem.
If you have questions, comments, concerns, compliments, corrections, criticisms, or concepts for content, contact the show via email at godlessrebelution@gmail.com, by text or voicemail at 330-81-REBEL, or Twitter the twatter at TGR Podcast. Thank you!
Your other talk that you recently delivered.
Yes.
Just on Saturday.
Saturday, yep.
You do, oh, that's right, Saturday. I'm so busy, I get shit
same here.
confused all the time. So,
It's Wednesday.
I was there and I don't remember which day it was.
Sounds about right.
So on Saturday, when you delivered your presentation on the ones who dwell within, you talked about the oracles of Delphi and that they used psychotropic gases.
Yeah. So I can't remember the exact mixture of gases, but it was it's something coming up naturally from the earth. It was a fissure they found, and the legend of the temple, why they built it where they did, because Delphi's in a or the part of Delphi it's in, it's like this mountainous valley, and it kind of comes up on a hill, and it's beautiful. You can look up the Google images. There's still ruins there. I think they probably still do tours and stuff, but a goat herder found it, and because he saw his goats acting funny when they came up by this crevice, right? Because the gas was fucking them up. Because it's like the kind of natural gas where you can't see it or even necessarily smell it. And in the paintings, they always make it this big billowy smoke, which I think is just artistic. So you can know the gases are there.
It's Maud Flanders' grave then.
Right.
So, gotcha.
Exactly. It's fucking Maud Flanders' grave. So, large. But so yeah, they ended up building this temple, because it's not that they didn't know the gases were there. It was that they assumed the gases were a gift from the gods to help them communicate through each other. Because when you got up there and smelled the gases, if it was in the right concentration, you'd go on a fun euphoria and think these crazy, it was a trip. It was like an acid trip, a fucking LSD trip, right? If anybody's ever done like psychotropics, like that feeling, is very much what it seems to be described by the historians that there's a whole book on it called Oracle, where scientists went and tried to find this mixture and do some like actual geography and that kind of work to investigate because the gases aren't coming out now. So whatever was coming out during the height of Delphi, that's why the temple ended up collapsing.
Well,
yeah.
I've been seeing a lot of studies going on where the early church history of the LDS Church, where they used magic mushrooms. They gave people tinctures and like what the hell the one I'm trying to say when they give you your cup of water nowadays, the sacrament, it would be something that has you trip balls with everybody else within the congregation. And Joseph Smith knew about it because he's the one that put it in there, kind of thing. And he's like, I'll have you seeing God, kind of thing.
Yeah, so he's like, it'll all make sense in a minute. Just
drink the Kool-Aid.
Bryce Blankenagel has a show called Naked Mormonism. He went like 3 episodes on that, and it was fucking fascinating to listen to the evidence they had of it. They don't have exact evidence, but they have Joseph being really good friends with this guy that knows natural medicine and stuff, and he had all this stuff in his kit, which was also handy for him making the ladies that he had have abortions and stuff. But
damn.
Early church history is fucking crazy stuff. I'm not even Mormon. I find it fascinating because we have so much.
Religion's been doing psychotropic stuff for thousands of years. That wouldn't even be weird. It would be more normal of them to have access to that stuff. Honestly, it's weird that they don't access anything like that. So
it's like a staple of shamanism.
Yeah. Yeah, but Delphi was like that, where it was just gases, and you had women who were acting as oracles, and this went on for hundreds of years, long enough that it's not one woman, right? It's multiple oracles. But they had structure set up to where they could recognize if the gases were too heavy, and they'd shut down the temple for that day, and they were trying to protect these women.
You know what they would do to test for that?
They had a measurement system where it was, I don't know if it was smell based. I'm trying to remember from the book. But they talk about, the gods are not talking or too mad, and that's how they'd interpret it to the people who are waiting. And sometimes people have to like camp outside and stuff. I know I remember a couple reading that women would get on it's called a tripod, so it was like a stool with 3 legs that would sit over the crevice in the temple, and they'd end up passing out. Like if people insisted on those days that they try to get a reading, the women would end up passing out because the gas was too heavy. And so they just started being like, hey, we're hurting our oracles, we're not doing this. Like, so they actually kind of a little bit of concern for these women, which was good. But they'd speak in tongues, and then it would be translated by the priest. And it was just, kings from afar came around to hear the wisdom of Apollo through these women.
How awesome that job would have been. She's high as shit.
She's so stoned.
It'd be hard to be that priest, though.
You have to make it up on the fly.
Yeah, you make it up on the fly, and it better be meaningful to this person.
This one person. They traveled maybe thousands of miles. Like, we're talking like Egyptian pharaohs and Roman fucking.
You will have success.
Did you see how quickly I turned that into the plight of males, and she just accepted it?
Hey, you guys run shit. You got plights.
I'm just kidding.
Like, can I leave the room now, guys?
I honestly didn't do that on purpose, but the second I did it, I'm like,
God damn it.
Fuck, I just did that. Bad Matt.
Terrible.
So your talk was titled "The Ones Who Dwell Within." Can you give us a brief synopsis of the presentation?
Yeah, so I've been interested in possession and exorcism for a long time. Probably one of my earliest focuses in religious studies when I was a kid.
Because you want to possess people?
I do.
Is
I'm
that
a
it?
demon secretly. It's hard not to be fascinated by it. Frankly, it's such an extreme ritual. There's so much drama to it, and especially coming at it from a Christian angle, like I was coming at it from. It's always evil. It's always this monstrous thing that happens. Also, this is kind of a weird. I don't have any connected research. We talked about it a little in the talk. This idea of the more rigid your society is, this is where scholars are seeing more of a possession manifestation. So even as a younger person, you kind of get this feeling as a younger person who had trauma, I will say, you have an odd connection to possessed girls, to this hysteria, to this blaspheming, to this idea of rejecting every ounce of all the shit trying to control you. Exorcism, or no, the last exorcism, which was, I can't remember what year it came out. I really liked that one. It was a found footage one. And a lot of people aren't into that, but
that was just 2 or 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, it wasn't terribly long ago.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. I thought it because it was it just took a different angle to it. That's all the thing with the exorcism movies. If you can take a new angle, I'm all over it. And this one took that new angle. But there's a point in that where the girl, the possessed girl, screams about how she's not in control of what happens to her. And I feel like that's a real big possession theme, is this idea of especially a young girl watching another young girl just be totally not in control of anything she does or says. And she's freaking everybody out and she doesn't understand what's happening. As a girl going through puberty and patriarchy and having to deal with grown men catcalling you on the way home from junior high and you're 12. Yeah. This is a huge feeling you have here. So I got into the subject a lot, and this idea that demons, I think we're all, that idea that demons exist, evil exists. We're kind of all attracted to that with that, or at least knowing whether or not it's real. And as a person who is still, I didn't come out as an atheist till my mid 20s, even though I kind of always had a problem with, could never really latch on to God. I could never get there. And I tried so hard.
You're not grabbing him in the right spot.
Just couldn't grab it. Just put that fish hook out there, and he was just like, "Fuck you," and just swam off. So
grab him by the covfefe.
Yeah.
I was gonna say grab him by the crucie.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell.
Yeah, couldn't find him. So it was. I tried all these good ways to find God, and so at some point it became you know what? I'm just gonna go look for demons, because if I can find demons by that logic, then there has to be Christian God, because those two things can't.
Mm-hmm.
If the rules are set up this, that means I should be able to find this God, demons, which means this and this and this. So, just ended up doing a bunch of research on possession and when it manifested and people who believed in it and people who didn't. And, what we found out, or what I found out and what other scholars have found out, is how possession is it's universal and yet so particular to the society it exists in. You can't have possession, you can't diagnose somebody with possession unless it exists as a concept. Which is why so many people in our culture in America who exhibit symptoms that you could call possession end up just getting mentally ill or nervous breakdown or any number of things, right? Because Americans, we don't really talk about possession like that. Some sects, some tiny little groups, right?
Little did we know, if we just blessed them enough, then we wouldn't have to deal with their mental health problems.
It's a thing. And then again, there's some cultures for whom possession is not a big deal. It's not only not a big deal, it's not evil. It's not a thing you stop or worry about. It's just a natural part of life. It's a natural part of accessing your ancestors' knowledge. That difference in how we have this universal experience where we seem to have all humans across space and time having this feeling of not owning themselves, and this feeling of having a foreign entity take them over, or being able to access knowledge beyond their scope and beyond their brain. And yet we always find different ways to talk about it. We always find different ways to decide whether or not we like it. It's deeply fascinating. So this talk is about not all the ways. We're talking about possession as a concept, why America is the way it is about possession, and what that says about us. And then we introduced a couple of specific religious traditions and what they do about possession, and then talked about how kind of the current ideas that scholars have behind it, because science hasn't figured it out. We don't have any consensus on what's happening. But one of the things I did find was how much more often it's correlated that we have possession instances when the society is rigid and when it's highly they make you conform, and when there's a lot of pressure to just obey. And how much more often possession occurs under those circumstances. And to me, even though I can't really articulate why, that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that you would have a freak out, blaspheming God, freaking out your parents.
As a release,
refusing to participate in everyday life things when you are emotionally repressed. And that goes double for women or trans people or anybody who's under, like, the more pressure you're under from our society, the more rules you're breaking just existing. The more likely you're going to need to blow off steam at some point. We're just human. Again, Christianity forces us to not think about all those things that make us human and forces us to deny it. And you can't. It will come out. And I think one of the ways it comes out is possession. It's not really a demon.
Right.
It's...
Are you sure?
Are you sure?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Dude, as much as I've tried to, like, call these guys out, you'd think they would have fucking noticed me by now and been like, hey, she's right here. Because that's a weird thing about...
What was the name of that? Oh, go ahead.
That's the other weird thing about possession in Christianity is they still have this element of consent. Like, a demon can't come into you unless you consent to it. And so it's this weird victim blaming thing. Because even though you're acknowledging that the demon's more powerful than you, and its whole existence is to fuck with you and corrupt you and mess with God and do what it's doing, somehow it couldn't have done it without your permission. Reminds me of like a vampire myth, right? You can't, it has to be invited in.
Like in The Exorcist, Reagan was playing with the Ouija board.
Yeah.
But that's interesting.
That gave it tacit approval,
But that also creates a problem for them, because then they're saying, at least in that situation, that the demons are more respectful and more humane than their priests.
Fucking A.
Because they're getting consent.
I didn't say it. They did, and you did. But that's, the demons have to get dissent, because again, the demons have rules they have to abide by that God set up and blah, blah, blah. So they can't do this without your permission. So if you just resist them, blah, blah, blah. And if you haven't, and you're possessed, it's kind of half your fault. We'll go through the exorcism stuff, but it is a social shame.
Well, and it's kind of God's fault too, right? Because he created everything.
I feel like it's God's fault, but whatever.
And then he created all of these rules. Like, he didn't make the rule like no demons.
Right. That should have been the rule, frankly.
And in fact, he created humans to start off as cursed, right?
We started cursed.
That has to be the case. Yet, in this case, they have to turn it around and say, no, default is that you have God with you, and you have to invite the demon, or else they can't get past your godliness. We don't have godliness. Yeah, well, in this case we do, because we have to still blame you for it. So in this case, you do have the godliness, and you have to let that down and invite the demon in. So Adam and Eve, that doesn't mean anything when we're talking about a demon possession.
Yeah, and that's like...
That's out the window.
We talk about that in the horror movie thing, like the Christian creation of this idea of pure evil, the Christian creation of a God that only has the attributes of positivity and redemption and stuff. You can't fuck with that. We're humans. We need gods that do fucked up shit and admit it, and we have room for that. Like pagan gods who were dicks and did good stuff and did bad stuff, and there was no morality to it. It was just they were big, powerful humans. But this God is a perfect God, and we don't have perfection. So naturally, that question of like, why did God create Satan at all? It's like, because there was nowhere else for all of the shit that God isn't to go.
Right.
And and God really is a creation of people. And when you create something like that philosophically and theologically, you have automatically begged the opposite.
Well, yeah, you've boxed yourself into a position where you have to create an explanation for all of this other horrible shit.
Right, and that's why all the shit falls apart so easily. That's why we're cursed, but we have to let him in, but we don't. But God's more powerful. Then why is Satan here? Then why are we worried about him at all if he's going to lose in the end? And the whole idea, isn't there like I can't remember if it's is it biblical that it comes from where like we're going to let Satan out and then he's going to reign for a second and then God's going to beat him again? Like, what the fuck are we doing? Why are we doing that? Who's letting him out of this, and why? Like, he gets one last chance to tempt people in the afterlife. Like, okay, why? What the fuck? Like, that doesn't even make a good story. This is stupid. What is the point of this? So, but again, if you draw yourself in such a narrow circle where you can't account for the full human experience, this is what happens. You have to answer those questions flat out.
Right, because even as irrational as the true believers can be, they still won't accept that this world is perfectly good. even they can see that's not going to fly. So you have to compensate for or account for the negative stuff that goes on.
Where you get the lame passive, like, well, God has a plan. Like, I don't know why bad stuff happened. I don't know why this hurricane's happened and why Trump's not helping anybody. God has a plan.
Or
like, really?
We have free will.
Great. That's
a common answer to that.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, then what's the point of God? Like, if you're not going to make me obey you because you're powerful, then what the fuck are you? So you're just hoping I'll obey you? Like, good luck with that. I don't like authority.
You're going to hope that I obey you, and you're not going to reveal yourself to me except through some maybe vague personal experience that I could have that is locked away from everybody else. I won't even be able to relate this story appropriately enough to anybody else to convince them of my personal experience.
Right.
And maybe one day, if they pray hard enough, they'll have this personal experience with this God.
This is why the group drugging is such a great idea of Joseph Smith is you have not a good idea. This is not endorsement. Do not drug people against their will ever, ever, ever. From a religious standpoint.
Yes, consent is everything.
Yeah,
people.
Consent, enthusiastic consent. If
yes, please, drugs.
Please, drugs, all the drugs now. But if you do it all at the same time, then you don't have to worry about that isolation of experience, right? Everybody fucked up at the same time. Let's all you can see why people do like group trips and group journeys, right? Or even when you have a journey with a shaman or some sort of guide, you've got somebody else there to validate and connect with you on that stuff. It's way harder when you're isolated. So possession's great. It's interesting. There's a lot of facets to it. It's
also 9/10 of the law.
So demons. So Lucifer really does own way more than we think.
Well, because God's letting him do it.
He's just letting him. He's just toying. He's like a cat with a snake. Just like
come back any minute now. He's gonna totally kick
any minute
devil's
now.
ass.
My big brother will be here.
One of the things that you mentioned during your talk, and I asked you about it afterward, and we talked about it a little bit, is that there are definitely some types of Christian faith, some denominations of Christianity that have more tradition and more experience, more instances of possession. And one of them is the Pentecostal faith.
Yes.
Where they use glossolalia, so they speak in tongues, they handle snakes, they do all of this, really fundamental Christian things, like getting back to the fundamentals of Christianity and what's in the Bible and their interpretation of it literally versus figuratively or anything. And so I said, well, why is it, or how could they explain? And as soon as I asked the question, I thought of the answer in my mind, but it struck me that for a religion that claims to be practicing the fundamentals of Christianity and that is the true religion and is closest to God and what he wants his church to be, that they would be the ones who suffer these possessions and have to deal with demons much more than these other faiths. And why would God choose to allow that to happen to them?
Yeah, that's a question that comes up a lot in possession stories. So The Exorcist, and I would highly recommend read the book. The Exorcist book is my favorite novel. It's so good.
Oh yeah,
it's so scary.
William Peter Blatty, very good book. Yeah,
it's so beautifully written. But they do talk about that. They talk about that extensively.
Exorcist 3 was it 2 or 3 that is just it's not even related to
3, I think, in the movie, but it was the second book. So I don't think the Exorcist 2 was related on a book because he wrote The Exorcist and then he did the one where Damien, like, his body comes back as like a serial killer or some shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Wait, do we cross into the Omen all of a sudden?
No, Damien Karras from the priest.
Well, yeah, in the Exorcist movie series. In the Exorcist movie series, and like I say, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3. I think it's 2. That it has like nothing to do with the books whatsoever.
I don't think
really.
I've seen 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first book's excellent. But they have a big. That's a shame of the books is it's. The the psychological point to me of the exorcism story is answering those questions. Why did they pick this little girl? Why is everybody suffering? Why is this happening? Right. And the whole, and I think Blatty did an excellent job of fielding those questions, which is a shame because like his own church hasn't done a great job of answering those questions. But he talks, Karras and Marin in between exorcism bouts are talking about how and that's what we named the talk after actually in the Crucible of Goodness is how Satan is working in spite of himself to serve the will of God, and how it's not about this little girl. It's about hurting everyone around her. It's about this showing that humans are base and that they have this animalistic nature that we can't get over. And so accepting God is finally accepting that even though we're shitty in our core and shitty enough that the demon can bring all this stuff out, that God would still love us. And that's the choice you have to make, is that accept this love. And I thought that was a really great answer. Exorcism Emily Rose has that whole moment where Emily's supposedly having these visions of the Virgin Mary, and she says, okay, well, you can stay, and you're going to suffer a ton, and you're going to die, and these demons are going to kill you, but a ton of people are going to learn about God because these demons killed you. And it's going to be this big thing, and you're going to bring a bunch of people back to God. Or I can just let you die right now, and you can come be happy in heaven. It's your choice, right? So I think for especially the Christian narrative, demons are a big, like you said, it's proof that you are godly. It's, if demons are attacking you, you're doing something right. After all, it's going to be this huge demonic apocalypse before the second coming, right? It's going to be this huge, monstrous attack that we're all going to suffer. Even though it's the left behind people still, they're still getting a second chance to fight, right? As far as I understand it, the whole point is to go through this extended suffering.
Mark of the beast.
Directly facing demons and stuff, to then come out hopefully on the other side with faith and understanding this stuff. So I think the Christian framing of it as a tribulation, as a trial of faith, as why would, the same way armies think of it, why would you don't send your fucking best guys, you don't send your immortals after the Spartans that early unless you're that fucking scared of them, because those are your best guys, right? You don't send your demons out after nobody. You send them out after your Mother Teresa's and your Gandhis and your big scary people. So I think that's a really likely narrative that has a lot of traction. It certainly has a lot of traction in exorcism media.
Oh, so that gives them an out for the horrible shit both of them did sometimes. Yeah, they were demonically possessed at that time.
I mean, unless... but that really only matters if you have, a very limited source of demons, right? If you have, nearly an infinite number, it doesn't fucking matter. Send them all. Send them all for everybody. Who cares?
You would think that'd be a tactic, but yeah, they never get that far in the explanation. Like why are you sending baby demons instead of Lucifer or big guys?
Because what
are they all fucking doing? And you'll get the whole like Legion thing where there's like, Reagan had a couple in her and Emily Rose had like 6, and it was multiple demons hanging out.
Sounds like we're talking about body thetans that you get from Scientology.
Right? A little bit.
Well, and speaking of Legion, I think I liked Legion more than I liked The Exorcist.
Legion. I never saw Legion.
Well, the book even.
Oh, the book, yeah. I didn't. But there was a couple parts in it I liked.
Yeah.
But The Exorcist at this point, The Exorcist is like buried in my bones. I can't. It was so formative for me. It was such a huge, like, as a writer, as a horror fan, as a religious studies person, like, I fucking love that book. It's so good.
Did they make a movie out of Legion? Because I think
that was 3.
They had a TV series that was out too. That was called.
Is that
Legion.
with that creepy ass fucking ice cream man?
No, that's Legion.
That's
the
Twisted
movie
Metal.
about that was a weird like. Semi-action horror about a different apocalypse where like Michael rebelled.
Yeah.
Which I didn't. I only saw bits and pieces. I didn't watch it because I'm picky on my fucking.
That's not the one with Denzel Washington, is it? That's.
I think so.
I don't think so.
I think it was more B. Oh, Paul Bettany's in it. He's like one of the fucking angels.
Yeah.
He's like Michael or somebody.
Yeah.
Vision. What?
I know. He betrayed us.
I had another question here.
Sorry, Matt. That's one of them comic book movies.
Have you seen none comic book movies? None.
No,
I have.
Matt doesn't like comic book
It's the voice of
movies.
Tony Stark's computer for the first handful of movies too. So.
Is that what you wanted me to do?
No. Well, I just figured maybe you've seen Iron Man at least.
Well, maybe. Maybe is there one? Oh, dude, I'm so glad you fucking reminded me. I'm gonna do it. I saw.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
What? I know you have something else. I know.
No. You go ahead.
Sorry, I'm
curious now what that was about.
Well, you said you had a thing.
Oh,
is this the thing?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I happened to catch a commercial for Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Thor's so hot.
And he goes, we could be the Revengers. And she's like, the Revengers? Well, we don't have to have a name. Are you fucking serious? How many millions of movies are there and they can't even get one semi-washed up comic to help them in the writing? That's the best they could. And they put that in the trailer.
Well, a lot of the scenes were improv.
I did not expect this level of rage about Thor.
The director of the movie is also a comedic director. He did.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
I've heard nothing but good. But
I'm still gonna watch the shit out of it.
I'm gonna watch it like 3 times. I don't care.
And Black Panther's coming.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need permission from me. I'm just saying.
He's very mad.
That's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. They put that. Well, not only did it make the movie, they used that in the trailer. Like, oh God, this is going to kill. This is so awesome. We got to use a part of that. It was hilarious. We got to put that in the.
It's a problem I've had with American media for a long time. You can't sell shit unless you make it funny. Unless you try to make it funny.
I was going to say, I think you're missing my point.
Because one of my favorite video games of all time, is Metal Gear Solid. Great spy action kind of, infiltration kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
The American trailer for it is some dumbass playing around in a wading pool kind of thing. And it's like, oh, I'm going to act like I'm a soldier. It's like, God damn it. Can we take anything seriously as a fucking nation sometimes?
No. The wrong things.
No.
So yeah, there's that.
Hey, this is Taylor Grin from grinandbearint.com, where we do news, analysis, and commentary, and you're listening to Godless Rebelution.
David Hume's logic on this, I think, is quite irrefutable. He says, what is more likely, that the laws of nature have been suspended in your favor and in a way that you approve, or that you've made a mistake?
Thank you to everybody who has rated the show on iTunes and Stitcher and are following us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And to all our Patreon patrons, you make the show possible.
Well, you said you had a thing. Do you want to do your thing now, or do you want to do your thing in the Patreon portion?
I'll probably do it. I should probably do it before Patreon, but we don't have to cut her time at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so what did you have, Dan?
I had okay, so.
Just keep
all
going.
Right, then.
Just keep going.
Longer show. Longer show.
So, when it comes to possession, it seems that so much within religion is about control or losing control or controlling others. And like you said, it's when you repress something for so long and you tell people that they can't do something for so long, particularly women who seem to be the largest target of possession in both books and movie and everything else, it seems very likely that they would be the ones to be possessed, quote unquote. Do you think that a lot of the women who in real life who are exorcised of their demons because their family or whoever thinks they're possessed, do you think it's a mental illness with these women that this is happening to, or that they really believe that they are possessed? I mean, because we know that there are real life examples of people who claim that someone was possessed, right? And so are these women willing participants in this grand facade of this battle between good and evil, or is it strictly a mental health issue? Are they just experiencing some release? They're allowing themselves to lose control and then being brought back to the right side, on God's side. What are their motivations, or why and how does this happen to regular human beings?
Right. Again, I think it's I think it's going to stretch across that spectrum. So you're going to have people who, I think about it this way. So if you're a young woman, you're raised in a strict Christian society, however you want to define that. You've got a lot of lessons on how you can act, how you can dress, how you can behave around anybody, how many times you're supposed to be praying, whatever your specific religious rituals are, your expectations. And then you have all this additional pressure as a woman, like cover your shoulders, cover your body, because you are in control of men's urges, right? You're getting lessons about your expectations, especially if you're younger, going through puberty. You've got all those hormone stresses. Social stress, I don't know how it was for everybody else. Junior high sucked. So you're looking at that era.
Hated junior high.
That's
that was the worst
time.
Yeah.
So, kids are just fucking wolves at that stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got all of this social pressure. And if you were dealing with anything abnormal, even just normal, not even abnormal, if you were just dealing with normal ass human emotions about sexuality, about maybe you're gay, maybe you're bi, maybe you're asexual, maybe you're trans, Maybe you don't understand why your culture doesn't interact with the black family 3 doors down. Maybe you're starting to notice the world in different ways. If you don't have any mechanisms for these ugly ass feelings you're getting, if you don't have any theological framework or philosophical framework to explain this, except the devil, if you're not feeling happy all the time, which again, women get different social pressures. So if you're not feeling nurturing, happy, comforting, emotive, right? Like, I've been called cold. I've been called shitty things for just not having these really extreme versions of femininity, which I don't think are all that particularly normal. I think some women are just that, but I also think a lot of it's just social pressure. So you've got all these things working against you. Maybe you have very little outlet or anybody to talk to about normal urges you're having or normal things. I could easily see a young woman interpreting that stuff as the devil working within her. And that making you more and more panicked. And that eventually you just lose your shit.
Well, it seems like there would be they get to a point where they would realize that that they're not allowed to set for themselves what they can control, right? They're not in control of the things that they can do.
Yeah.
It's everybody else controlling them. And so I imagine that for some people, it would be this sense of, all right, fuck it. If I can't control anything, then I'm not controlling anything, and you all are going to deal with the fucking consequences.
And maybe you have seen exorcism or heard about it in your community. Maybe you have heard about women in your community who have gone through this thing, and you've heard about the behavior, and you've seen the community response. You've seen that all the people who are neglecting your needs are going to come rushing to you because now they think you're fucking possessed. And they weren't listening to you when you were just a young girl who's troubled about patriarchy or having a hard time with her first period or any number of things, or maybe she's feeling sexually harassed, but your community doesn't recognize what she's going through as harassment or abuse. But you know what they do recognize? When you think you're fucking possessed, or when you start blaspheming God, when you start saying those kinds of things, everybody starts paying attention. When you start disobeying as a woman, when you start demanding your space as a woman, everybody pays attention. If you look at like insane asylum records from like especially the Victorian era, watch how many women were put away and look at the things they were like. They'll put the reason why they were put away, and it's ridiculous stuff. Speaking bad to her husband or reading the wrong kind of book.
She'd have to be crazy to do that.
Right? Sanity's
the root of hysteria,
right? And sanity's a social construct. Like sanity is a mechanism of social control. There's no objective definition of sanity. That's why we keep putting out different versions of the DSM. That's why they keep changing. That's why we're constantly, as we learn stuff about the brain and the human reaction, having to update our definitions of what's crazy. Gay people were crazy. What? 30 years ago, if that. Trans people, I'm pretty sure, are still in the DSM as a mental disorder, right? Yeah. Ben Shapiro spouts that shit all the fucking time.
Yep.
So,
and atheists have been, at least at some point.
Absolutely.
And Christians never have. So it's obviously totally off.
Right. It's not an objective measurement.
If they drop to their knees and they talk to something that's not there, that's completely sane.
Yeah.
It's listed under delusion, but if it's religious, it's an exception.
Right.
To delusional.
Right. So if you're a person who lives in a religious community and you recognize that nobody's going to come help you if you have regular symptoms or depression or problems, but they will help you if you are exhibiting these crazy kickbacks of your social norms, whether or not you're conscious of making that decision, because I don't believe that every possession victim is conscious of what they're doing. I can see that's a path of least resistance, man. If you need help and you need people to pay attention to your pain, why wouldn't you take that way out? It's the only one they've given you. Start screaming about how much you hate God. Why wouldn't you? He's the one who put you in this religious family and all of these situations you couldn't control. Who else are you going to get mad at? And look how, and especially if you can, even though there's a concept of consent to possession and demon possession, look how fast that all of that freak out can be blamed on a demon. And once it's out of you and you feel better and everybody's maybe paying attention to you more and getting your needs served, there's going to be some social shame that comes with you having been possessed, depending on your community. But for the most part, people are probably going to forgive you of everything you said and did while you were possessed. Because again, you were just possessed. It was a thing.
And how great would you feel at the end of that?
Dude, it's an emotional, it's like going to therapy.
It's like the airing of grievances in Festivus.
Yeah, I used to go break dishes in like abandoned parking lots when I felt stressed, like go buy stuff from Walmart and just smash them. Like it's that same just release of, you got to get your shit out. So I think, are there people that really believe they're possessed? Yes. Are there people who see it as an opportunity to manipulate? Yes. Are there people who don't understand any of that and still somehow find themselves with those feelings and actions as if they were manipulating? Totally. Because I don't think especially young kids and young girls are fully aware of all of the young girls especially, we're taught to fucking bury our instincts. We are taught from a really early age that we can't trust ourselves. We're gaslit. We're taught that we don't know what's going on in our own bodies and minds and communities, and everything's reinterpreted for us, right? Like, that guy wasn't being creepy. He just likes you. He wasn't following you home, and it was just a compliment. Like,
he hits you because he likes you.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. How early are we
Fuck
taught that we can't trust, we can't decide for ourselves when something's harmful,
Right.
or when we don't want to go through a thing? We don't have that choice, right? It's just boys just do that or whatever. So
boys will be boys.
Exactly.
Ugh, nope.
So this idea, I think there's a lot of different ways you can end up at possession, but I really think they all have to do with emotional release in our culture. Like, I'm sure they have a lot of emotional release in like Haitian voodoo, but it's probably a different emotional release where it's more community and bonding. Because again, it's not a bad thing to them. They're not trying to fix your possession. They have a feast and a dance, and they learn from their ancestors, and they pass on wisdom to each other, and it's a totally different experience. But our culture,
and they have priestesses,
right? Women can have control in voodoo. Women can be the spiritual guides that deal with this. But our culture's super patriarchal. It doesn't, there's so many factors that go into control, and especially modern American culture. I really think that's where a lot of our possession comes from is, it's emotional repression. It's the same reason we have nervous breakdowns. It's the same, related to the same reasons we get so many white dude shooters, right? Like, they have not been taught how to deal with their human emotions. Their culture doesn't take care of them. They have been taught that the way they deal with their emotions is violence. That's what they're going to do. That's what everything in their culture has taught them to do and allowed them to do and given them permission to do. So no fucking wonder we keep getting these guys shooting everything up.
And encouraged, and not just encouraged, but is stated as the norm. Like, oh, well, he did it because he's a guy and he's got to get that out somehow. And he felt,
Of course, his wife cheated on him. What'd you expect? Like, are you fucking kidding? I've been cheated on. I have not killed a single fucking person. That's what I expect. I expect to not kill people when we have minor emotional inconveniences. Are you crazy?
Shit, I should be taking notes.
Yeah. But look how fast. Like, is anybody even talking about Vegas anymore in the news? It's been like 3 fucking weeks, dude. Look how normalized this shit is.
Remember how we were going to get rid of bump stocks? No.
Remember that for like 2 seconds? We were like, oh, maybe we'll do something. Yeah.
I was just sitting here thinking no reason about just major overreaction to a slight distaste in modern entertainment. And if that's relevant.
Are you is it gonna be Thor? Is that what sets you off? Is the Thor?
No, I'm just saying, like, if you really pull back and look at what I'm complaining about and how much emotion I show, how much anger I showed over my slight displeasure in one segment of this massive amount of entertainment I could possibly choose from and consume. I don't have to watch that movie.
Right.
And I could just be like, it's not really my thing. But I didn't. I went into rage mode over it.
Yeah. And
I'm just thinking that's maybe
you were possessed for a little minute there.
Well, I was going to say that, that you were talking about, people, you were throwing dishes and stuff like that. I was thinking at that time, that's what this show does for me. Like, following
therapy.
Trump and doing all that. And I come to the show and be like, but
it's your cathartic thing for the week.
Yeah. But certainly my range of emotions is very, very narrow. And most of that is filled with, rage, anger, if I feel anything.
That's all you've been told you get to have. Men don't get to have.
I'm not trying to turn this into
anything.
that.
But you don't. You guys, like, that's a shitty thing. Patriarchy hurts everybody, and it hurts men too.
Right. Yeah.
And you guys don't get to have a full range of emotions. You don't get to access anything that looks vaguely feminine, whatever the fuck that means.
Toxic
masculinity.
Right.
You even like are taught to like babysit your own kids. What the fuck is that? Like, it hurts everyone.
These are my kids. I'm not babysitting.
Right.
These are my fucking kids.
Right. Or you're taught not to take interest in them. You're taught that like as long as you're paying the bills or whatever. The encouragement.
As long as I can make money, my children are automatically taken care of.
I don't have to emotionally engage or whatever. Right?
I'm going to have drinks while you do all the work.
Exactly. Yeah, but you guys are allowed rage. You guys are allowed emotion, and women are not, and that's why women who get angry are on their period and crazy and blah 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 blah. Because
hysterical.
Women don't get to be angry. That's the one thing we don't get to be, because anger is a power emotion.
Yes.
And when you get angry, shit gets done, and that's why people don't like angry women. And that's why especially black women are constantly called angry. Yeah, because
black men
you just
too.
take that power. Yeah, that fear.
Anyone you're trying to oppress.
Make sure they're angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're too angry. They need to be controlled. You're freaking out. Blah blah blah. Right. So,
well, and we see that from people on the fucking the fucking shitlords, as soon as they think they've won, if they can get you angry, if they can get you upset,
now, Dan.
if
You're
they
showing
can
emotion. Careful.
Yeah, if they can tip you off of your emotional even keel, then they've automatically won the argument.
Right, because it's that weird post-enlightenment shitty
facts not feels,
right,
is what they say.
If you have feelings, you've automatically lost. Like, that makes like what the fuck does that mean? How are you
that should be a fallacy in itself.
Yeah, well, it completely removes humanity.
Right, and it's these same assholes that are like, oh, well, if it's not a STEM field, fuck you. Like, really? You think you're here to tell me that emotion doesn't drive history? Are you stupid?
Yeah.
Like, only logic drives history, or we can only study this data set to really learn about humanity. Like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
People make irrational decisions that drive history all the time. The slave trade wasn't rational. There's nothing about America that's really rational. And yet here we are. And,
voting for Trump isn't rational.
But it is a huge part of history now. So the sooner you can cope with humanities and this field of like studying humans on human levels, and not this idea of this Ubermensch bullshit that we're going to get to this logic that, because first of all, dude, all input that humans are taking is limited by our biological functions. We can't see the whole fucking light spectrum. Our ears suck. Like, and you're gonna tell me that we're the arbiters of fucking objective reality? Shut the fuck up. No, we're not. So you need to incorporate all this stuff. Incorporate the humanities. Incorporate all the stuff the patterns we have learned about humans, how we behave, and work that into your science. And then maybe we can figure some of this shit out. But you're not gonna make a math problem that solves anything. That solves humanity and that figures out religion. Like, that's why all these guys get all mad about why hasn't religion died yet. Like, maybe because it won't. Maybe because it's not logical, and maybe humans don't operate by logic, and maybe you can't talk people out of a thing that serves a need that isn't logical. Maybe we don't need logical shit all the time, guys. I know that sucks because it's harder to categorize and control. But
well, and maybe we need to come up with something that meets those emotional needs outside of also teaching them all of this supernatural baggage that goes along with it.
Right. Like, I feel like possession's proof that the more you try to control and logicalize and not that Christianity is necessarily logical, but the idea of like categorizing behavior and being like, this is what we do and this is what we don't do. Possession is proof that will never work because it's always all those emotions are going to find a way out every time. Every time. I mean, you can't force people not to be human. They will, no person or group has ever accepted subjugation or slavery lying down. There's always been subversion. There's always been, resistance every time. You can't, good luck. You're never going to get that.
I'm so glad I left my shitlord past behind.
Oh man. I'm hoping it's a phase that, like, I'm hoping at some point, especially men, won't have to go through that. That it's like a really specific, like 2000s era thing that, I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just naive thinking it was ever that young, but I'm really hoping at some point.
Well, if we can use science and logic and reason alone to
we'll
fix
think our way out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's happened.
You had a point. You were like, oh. Did you forget what it was?
Yep.
Sorry, did I ramble?
No.
I didn't see.
Well, I know sometimes we just kind of move past it and
yeah. I mean, that's what happens. Especially with this, many people. Like, we get used to it, though, every week when we've got 3 at least of us in here.
Oh, yeah.
And we're just talking, and then we're like, no, wait, I'm not going to interrupt and make it. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I would have held on to it if it was really important, I think.
There's no raising hands in here.
Hey, guys.
Well, that was all the questions I had. Did you want to do your thing?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, he's got a paper.
Get his paper out.
So my week was interesting.
Oh, yeah? What did you do over the week, Matt?
I'm glad you asked.
Did you see a Thor Ragnarok trailer?
I'm so glad you asked. Yes,
the one week that I don't ask what you did because Ryan's not here who would tell me something and you would just go, well, nothing.
Right.
Or the Black Panther trailer?
Yeah, it's not your fault. But I did go to church on Sunday.
Whoa.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Get out of here.
Oh.
And
like just for shits and giggles?
Danielle's brother came home from his mission.
Oh, was it a lovely reunion?
And I really wish I brought an audio recorder.
Oh, yeah?
And I think if I go again, I will.
Yeah.
A lot of the standard confusing belief for knowledge that you hear all the time. Anecdotal evidence is the only thing they ever bring up, that kind of stuff. But it was the first time I've ever seen it in a Mormon church that somebody ever attempted apologetics from the pulpit.
Oh,
really?
It's kind of a
other than just the standard. I know this church is true.
Yes,
Joseph Smith
I
was
love
a
my mom and
prophet.
dad.
He was actually trying to make a philosophical argument of some type, but
that's definitely not their wheelhouse.
Oh, you're gonna like it. I actually want to do a little bit of a game with it. I want to see if you guys can guess his point, but I'll tell you everything leading up to where he gets.
Okay.
This is basically what he said. This was his basic argument, and of course, this is sort of paraphrasing or just grabbing what I can kind of remember. But he started by saying that we all have faith in something. Pretty common. And then
hang on, let me get all David's like, what do you mean by faith?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What do you mean by something?
And he says, scientists tell me that Earth at the equator moves at the speed of roughly 1,000 miles an hour. That the Earth's moving around the sun at about 67,000 miles an hour. And the other day I sat outside and pondered these things and realized there must be a God because... What do you think?
Otherwise, we'd all fly
off the
off
planet because I don't know what gravity is.
He's got one of his fingers on the top of each of our heads, holding us here on the planet.
Not quite.
Oh.
What do you think?
That's what I was going to go for, because I see the model of the solar system as it's constantly rocketing through the galaxy, and then everything's spinning around it. So nothing's like a complete elliptical orbit as it looks like.
We'd be crashing
it's
into
careening and
stuff.
it's
corkscrewing.
Yeah.
Wandering off into space.
And so
maybe?
all these folks that love their sci-fi with time travel, I'm like, you better hope there's time and space travel when you go to that fucking time machine. Otherwise, you're going to be in the middle of fucking space when you come out on the other end.
Right.
I went back to the 50s.
In the
middle of nothing.
Space.
He thinks there must be a God because this is what he said. Not a single hair was out of place.
Oh, for fuck's
No wind at all.
What? Wait. No wind. Where?
On the
no wind
equator?
where?
Or in his house?
Despite moving at those speeds.
Does he not understand how speeds work when there's no atmosphere?
He also doesn't understand how vacuums work.
I was going to say.
Does he not know the wind, like wind on Earth, is a thing?
Yeah, he does, but he's saying he thinks we should be experiencing at least 67,000 mile an hour winds because we're hurtling through space.
He's like, I heard a number, and then I decided what we should be doing, and then we're not doing that. So God,
therefore God, God is stopping the wind. Apparently, I honestly was sitting there in the pew going, "Are you fucking stupid?" And I was sitting next to my 16-year-old who was
mouth agape, just
Danielle just started laughing, and Brandon was sitting next to me on his phone. And he looked up and he's like, "Did he just say that?"
That's all.
I think I would have had a really hard time not making an audibly loud guffaw.
Yeah.
Wrong. No, you're incorrect, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really do that, but yeah, I was just like. I the whole time. That's what I was doing. I couldn't really make words. I'm just like, that is.
I laugh at anything.
And I was asking. I was like,
giggling my ass.
I was like, do you know what he's talking? Do you know what is this? Do you know what his point is? Do you know what he's trying to? And I'm like, I'm fucking talking to that guy. I'm gonna go talk to that guy.
Shit.
And Brandon and Daniel were like,
I have to talk to him.
This must be cleared up.
They're like, the reason we have wind is because the Earth is spinning. But you know, if the whole everything else moving, it's moving through a bunch of nothing, guys.
Have you heard of the term atmosphere, sir?
That ends at a certain point.
It reminds me when Bill O'Reilly was like, "Oh, the tide's coming in, the tide's going out." You're like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You can't explain that."
I love that Dave Silverman has his own meme face. Really?
Maybe you can't explain that, Mr. Bill O'Reilly.
Like, we've been explaining that for a while. That's not even the most weird. Like, there's weird shit on the planet that if you really wanted to point to be like, God, you could be like, all right, you got me. That's weird. I got nothing for that. But wind and tides and like gravity aren't those things.
Like to say that, like, you've got to be so fucking ignorant of so much of the world around you to say that you can't explain the tides.
Well, the shame is like, those are good questions. Like the equator question and the why isn't the wind thing. Okay, solid question. You haven't been taught the physics of astronomy and our planet. Cool. Let's teach you. But that you automatically make this leap to tell the story about how that proves God. Like,
Therefore
that's
God,
to
yeah.
me,
Well,
like,
and to say
so
that,
close.
like I'm not even going to try to find an answer myself.
Right. It just must be God.
I'm just going to say, well, this clearly is the answer because
this
that's what I
amazing?
thought in my head. I'm not going to do
I
any
need this
further
story to tell
research
it this thing.
or investigation. I just know it's got to be God.
That's what I was telling to Brandon when we were leaving there. I'm like, he's like, you don't even need to. And I'm like, no, but I do, because this is dishonest. He knows he's going to be talking to a group of people. He didn't bother to check. And the way he's talking about it is like, he's a fucking expert and he's going to eschew the science. Like a fucking astrophysicist hasn't thought of that. They haven't thought of this problem.
Yeah. Nobody else on the face of the planet has ever had this realization.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson he knows we're moving through space at 67,000 miles an hour, and he's never wondered why it doesn't blow on his face. Never crossed his mind, so we all have equal faith. Great job. You really sold that.
All those poor children are listening to him to be like, oh, it
I
must
know.
be. And then
I don't think they had any idea what he was talking about.
Good.
Well, they didn't want to be there.
Were
just
you- were you
everybody
looking
else
around?
didn't want to be
this
there.
sucks.
Were you looking around the room like, is anybody else buying this bullshit?
Yeah,
Like,
kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, they were doing the normal things like, whispering at each other and kind of like,
Giving
heads
Cheerios
down
to
in
the
their
kids.
phones and, taking care of stuff.
Like
and
not
nobody's-
really paying attention to what he's
No,
saying.
no. And
Dude,
he's up
Mormon
there
stuff's
with
the most boring services.
Oh,
ever.
yeah.
I don't blame him. They really are dull.
and he's just up there leaning with one elbow on the podium, like he's cool and knows exactly. I'm just like,
Let me
dude.
tell you kids about a cool thing called the wind. You ever heard of it? Let me rap with you a second.
Caused by
God damn.
God. No, stopped by God.
Right.
Because it should be 67,000 miles an hour.
So did you talk to him?
No, I didn't.
Ah.
He stayed up and lingered up behind the podium for a while.
Well, I don't
probably
get to
good
stand
for
up
your-
for that.
Well, he's
often.
got to stay in his position of power as long as possible.
Get on that dais, dude. Don't
Yeah.
come down. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gross. That sucks. And I'm sorry you had to go to a thing
Oh,
like
and all
that.
their hymns are
Right.
just dirges. They're just
They
so
are. They're
sad.
so
It's
like that was the thing I took away as a kid. We're like, man, I liked going to mass because at least you had the big fucking cathedral and weird and the standing and kneeling and the Latin, and it was all very dramatic.
Oh, yeah,
But man,
yeah.
I meant that Mormon stuff is just like you might as well just die. You might as
The
well kill
Catholic
yourself.
calisthenics, the stand, kneel, sit,
Right.
kneel,
Well, I
stand, yeah.
had Baptist music, so it was a lot of like
See,
Jesus
I
loves
like
the
that.
little children. You
Or
had
you
all
get like the Baptist choirs going.
Yeah.
Or even
Mhm.
Pentecostals are crazy. Their revivals are crazy and awesome. At least you
There's
have some energy to it.
There's energy and life to that kind of thing. but
LDS Church,
not
you got
LDS
popcorn popping on the apricot tree.
I wonder
That's
what-
only a primary, damn.
Not in sacrament.
I
No,
wonder what
True.
they would do if
True.
I just showed up and sang one time, but like joy to the world. Like, could they stop? They could stop me,
They
I
won't.
guess,
They're
but
too
they
nice.
probably
They
won't.
won't.
They'd be like, "Oh fuck."
Look how
Jesus gave him
enthusiastic
that
this
voice for a
special person
reason.
is.
He's very special.
He's
Look
just
how much
so-
he loves God.
He's possessed.
Also, I don't know
He's
if you know
probably
this,
possessed.
but he doesn't believe in wind. So
He's one of those
That's Brother Mitchell. He's not a believer. Bless him for showing up here, though. We just love him so much.
and you would think, as childlike as he is, he would love superheroes, but don't even bring it up.
Don't. He gets so upset. He's that Thor trailer.
Can you show me on the doll where Black Panther touched him? I'm actually looking forward to that one.
Black Panther's gonna be awesome, dude.
Oh, there's already another one coming. Of course there is.
Yo.
Well, I just-
they've had a whole plan since they're like 2020. Dude.
I just
Those
like
things
the,
happen.
the joke about that's been going around a lot is like the two white guys that they show on the movie poster
Yeah.
are Gollum and Bilbo Baggins, and so like they're the Tolkien white guys. It's stupid, but it made me guffaw a little
I like
bit.
it. I like it. No, it's gonna be a good movie, dude. I'm stoked.
I'm looking forward to Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to that one more than Thor. Thor
Oh yeah,
looks
dude.
a
The
bit
Thor movies
cheesy.
have been real lacking.
Jeff
I gotta be
Goldblum.
honest. Oh well, he's great, and he'll be great.
Well, he's great
He's
in
always
everything.
great.
Like
It's insane.
he's great in the Jurassic Park that he was in that was kind of a turd, but
Portlandia, even his little spot
Yeah.
in there, I love him. He's
Yeah.
so
Tim and Eric.
yeah.
his fucking commercials that he does are awesome.
Yeah.
Just the ridiculous, silly little commercials that he's in. But Thor looks like it's kind of cheesy.
It'll be cheesy. Thor's always been the weakest of the MCU for me.
Carl Urban's
Yeah.
in it too. I love Carl Urban.
Yeah. Oh, Carl Urban's a badass dude. He does so much cool shit. Oh man, what a cool guy. So much fantasy cred.
Yeah,
He's in
people
that freaking Riddick Chronicles of Riddick I love that's just weird and doesn't make any sense.
Well, I like the fact that what the fuck's his name? The guy in Riddick, what's his name? I can't remember
Vin Diesel?
Vin Diesel has been leveraging making all these extra Fast and the Furious movies just so he can continue making Riddick movies.
Right.
And I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's a giant nerd. He's got like a D&D character and a tattoo and shit. He's been playing for like 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a crazy nerd, so he's all into the sci-fi shit.
Ryan tried telling us that the voice in all of his movies and everything isn't the regular voice that he has.
I would be surprised, but I've never seen any proof of that. I would be surprised.
Sounds like he's gaslighting you, man.
Well, to hear Ryan tell it's that in real life, Vin Diesel talks like
I don't
this.
want that. Ryan wishes.
I'm like,
he's like, he can't be that buff and have that cool voice. One of those has to be a lie.
I'm like, I'm not buying that one.
Well, after learning most guys in Hollywood are shorter than you'd think they are, it's like, I wonder.
Tom Cruise is like nothing. Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone, they're all tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Height-wise, anyway.
Yep, it's a lie. See, all of our mythology is a lie, guys. Don't believe it. Don't believe in it. Kill your gods. They're all lies.
Yeah, don't hang out with the movie stars because they're just going to let you down.
A lot of them are rapists, apparently, so just don't.
Holy shit, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it has been a pleasure having you in the studio with us, Megan, and you as well, Chris.
Yeah, I love being here.
I love having you guys here. You're both just a shit ton of fun to hang out with and talk about fun stuff with. Stuff that makes me think and go, gee, I'm going to scratch my chin on my head.
At the same time.
Do you have a chin on your head?
Yes.
No.
At the bottom.
You're going to judge him for it.
Oh, right. Right, that one.
I had to think about that for a second. Huh? I kind of walked into that one. What's going on?
I was thinking I was humaning wrong. Dan was just like, yeah, I do. I do have a chin on my head. I'm like, wait.
You're like looking up, like, what the fuck?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I know you're rapping.
Oh, no, you're fine. That'll wrap it up for the regular portion of the show. Before we go, I want to make sure that I thank all of our Patreon supporters. That would be Camille Borowski, Numania, Alan Firth, Gaytheist, Anonymous, Larry Wilson, Marius Butrikowski. Or is it Bertrick? I may have been saying that wrong.
Bertikowski. I'm not sure the wise.
I may have been just really fucking that up for a very long time. Dr. Dan, Matt's boss from the 2SC podcast, to whom we pledge loyalty. Janet Uter, Let Them Eat Kofefe. Stephen Andrus, Christy Kalbach, Utah Outcasts, Tim Jacobson. Yay, Utah Outcasts. Matt Tueller, Rob Otto, Megan Kennedy.
Yay! Hey, that's my name. That's me.
Andrew Vodopich, Brandy Hamrick, Jeremy Goodson, Angelica Pearson, Wes Aaron, Purple Dragon, and Taylor Grin. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all who have not yet become Patreon supporters, but are liking the show, liking our page, tweeting at us, doing reviews and mentioning the show and recommending other people. If you can't afford or don't want to give us money, but would still like to support the show, please continue doing all of that fantastic stuff. I'm always very pleased when I'm just stumbling around the social medias and the internets and I see somebody mention the show and they mention it favorably. And
I know.
that's, I'm always like, awesome.
That's so weird. You're like, whoa, people will follow.
Yeah.
What I'm doing.
Yeah. That's so cool.
I'm doing this just for me.
I saw the other day that we're very near 1 million downloads now, which is just insane.
Yeah.
To me, it's crazy to me.
It's crazy to me.
I mean, I've been on the show the whole time and people still are tuning in, apparently. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah. I was very happy to hear that as well. I think that's fantastic. And like I said, when I'm just stumbling around reading comments on someone else's post or somewhere else, and I see that somebody has mentioned our show, and I'm like, oh wow, like they didn't tag the show, they didn't tag any of us. I'm just reading through comments, and I see that somebody has made a comment about us or the show, and I'm like, that's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah.
Just like stumbling into it on just randomly. I think that's pretty cool.
It is cool.
Thank you all very much for joining us. Until next time, crucify that demon.
Leave a review to achieve nirvana.
And rate the show 5 times a day towards Satan.
How's Megan's mic?
I don't know. Good? Screaming?
It's good.
Okay. Oh no! Oh no!
Serious?
No, yes, fucking hell, dude.
But you got it mostly on the plastic thing, so.
Yeah, but this happened last time, too.
Oh no!
Yeah, except last time it was up here, so I guess there's that.
Yeah, let me. God damn it.
What?
New rule: Chris can't have beer in the studio.
What even?
That's so fucking weird.
That's actually very fortunate that you brought that little thing in here.
Yeah. I'm gonna put a little break in there.
Yeah, let's open that window because I'm fucking fat and hot.
Been looking at adding a
Just
couple
1
more
second.
monitors in here.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, more monitors everywhere.
Yeah.
Need more cables.
Well, I would just close this and put a couple monitors there.
Gotcha.
Mount them high in case Chris ever comes back.
I've got a death grip on it over here.
Now it's gonna just break in your hand. We'll have to take you to the fucking hospital and clean up blood and beer.
It's the most Halloween episode ever.
I should have improv that one, but that's not my regular line.
Should have said the power of Christ compels you to donate to our cause.
That would have been better. Actually, you know what? Cut that out and we'll just stick that on every show.
Okay.
The power of Christ compels you.
We were talking H.P. Lovecraft earlier. Have you ever heard of the, someone did a musical called A Shoggoth on the Roof?
No way.
Where they take the music for Fiddler on the Roof and they use H.P. Lovecraft characters and stuff in it. So instead, if I was a rich man, if I was a deep one.
Awesome.
Oh, it's fucking amazing. I forgot that you like Cthulhu, so you'd probably be into it, Dan. It's funny as shit.
So is it Cthulhu in that or what?
No, like the very first song is. I was a fucking. I had got my letter in drama in high school. I mean, I had ass kickings coming my way most of the time in high school. So.
Comic books and drama class, yeah.